Submit to the High Council here on World Class Bullshitters. I'm your host, Jeff Hicks, and with me tonight is the one and only Caffeinated Wolf.
What is going on, Jeff? What is going on, chat? Hail to the High Council.
Now, folks, we just started a little early because we didn't want you to have to wait any longer. We know what it's like to wait for your favorite show. It sucks. You get antsy. There's anticipation. You get a little sweaty on the brow. When's it going to start? When's it going to start? Well, folks, we didn't want to do that to you because that's not cool. You don't do that to friends. So we wanted to go ahead and start now. But we do have a guest, Script Doctor. He's on his way. But we're just going to play a little catch-up. We're going to check in with the audience, see how everyone's doing, and then we'll be off on another wonderful show. Now, tonight, I have seen Black Panther. We're going to be reviewing that. We're also going to be remembering Kevin Conroy, the late, great Batman. And finally, as well as other things, we're going to be talking about how Star Wars is doing so poorly that they had to go from Disney Plus to Fox. So we're going to have fun with that too, because 3 years ago now, Disney's riding high. Mandalorian, all these exclusive shows only to Disney Plus, but now network television. So be prepared for that victory lap a little later tonight. But let us take a time to shout out everyone here. We have our friends Dr. Coffinails, hail to you. We have Patrick Lemire. We have Dr. Meatballs. We have two doctors in the chat, so this is a distinguished chat. Congratulations. Hail to our friend Miss Ninja Julian. Shout out to John Thomas, as well as Aurora Uplinks. Enrique Vasquez, what's up, dude? Clone Geek, Donkeysaurus Rex, Adama, and a whole lot more, including P Money. And Jesse says hi, Enrique. And who else?
Hello, Jesse.
A lot more. And Andrew says hi back to you, Jesse. Andrew says hi back. So, folks, like we always say, if I sit and spend the entire time saying hi to everyone here, that's going to be the entire show. And if you want that, well, bring it to Good Morning Pop Culture. We'll have a lot of fun there. But you know what we're going to talk about. So let's get started. Andrew, anything crazy happened to you, man, since we've last streamed together?
No, not really. Aside from me attempting really hard to speed run a couple of games, because later this week the new Pokemon games come out on the Switch, and I'm going to disappear from society for a little bit, as I do every 3 or so years when a new one comes out. So that's pretty much it. I've got a lot of stuff going on that I can't talk about with the Rippaverse. But guys, if you are not doing so already, make sure you're following all the official Rippaverse channels on social media, because we do have some big stuff coming up. It's going to be a huge 2023. That's all I'm going to say.
Nice. Now, folks, I have more good news. I have a message from FedEx that the proof for Tits and Art is on its way to me today. I'm just waiting. They said by end of the day. So, many moons ago, which really wasn't that long ago because the campaign closed out, 3 weeks ago? Since that campaign is closed out, everything has been moving forward. So, like I told you, be on the lookout for the book. I will post on social media pictures of me with the proof. I will then get the book printed, and then it'll be on its way to me. So it sounds like I'm excited because I am excited. It's done. We're here. We're in the promised land. It's exciting to be able to bring you some wonderful art, and it is a big old book, 11 by 17. So go over to titsandart.com, folks, if you want to grab a copy. But just wanted to give an update to all of our wonderful backers. Now, Andrew, I'm glad you brought up gaming, because I have fallen down a quick gaming hole, and it feels so familiar. So the other night, Jesse and I were up, and she's like, hey, I really want to play those new Mario Kart levels. And so I was like, all right, I'll just get the whole bundle pack. And it's been, fun. But since last Thursday's podcast, I mentioned playing Ocarina of Time. I have been so lost into Ocarina of Time. And the best part is I remember everything about it. Like, you ever pull up an old game and you're like, oh man, what do I do here? What do I do there? I'm just with Zelda. It's like, oh wait, I got to go to Kakariko Village. Then I got to get the song. Then I got to go to get the shield. It's been awesome, dude. It reaffirms why that's one of my favorite games of all time.
With Zelda games especially, I'm right there with you. Where I'll go back after years and years, and I'll still know it like it's the back of my hand. Like the last time I played it is a month ago or something, and I know where all the secrets are. I know where all the gold scatullas are. I know where all the heart pieces are. All of that. I know where the best places to stick and plant the magic beans early on. All of that. It's fantastic. That is the sign of a timeless game. at least in my humble opinion. And I have 100% completed that game on every single console that's been made available on.
And you know what? I'm glad that it's still available as ubiquitous or as universally as it is, because I love it. The only thing I'll say bad is it's not as hard as I once thought. It's kind of easy.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah. The difficulty doesn't hold up.
No, like I don't want to say it's laughably easy, but I got through the Great Deku Tree in, like I said, like 17 minutes. I was already at the castle meeting Zelda. Like I was like, Jesus, man, this is not a difficult game. And it's the same way. I got through Dodongo's Cavern. I got through Jabu Jabu's Belly. I'm already halfway through the Forest Temple. It's just like, oh yeah, you go left, then you go right. It's a great trip down memory lane. Now, let's say hail, folks, to our newest member of the show tonight. Say hello to Script Doctor. What is up, dude?
Hi, everybody. I apologize for my tardiness. I had an Austin Powers evacuations moment I had to deal with first. But happy to be here, shoot the breeze, listening to a little bit of Zelda content, which is awesome. I'm a traditionalist. I like the original classic Zelda from Nintendo, with the gold cartridge and everything. But
nice.
No, it's that's some awesome stuff. I've seen and played Ocarina of Time. I thought it was fantastic, but I never managed to finish it because I did not own an N64. It was my best friends who lived across the street.
The N64 was such a great system, and you ever like look back on the history of it and they're like, oh, it didn't sell well, the games were this, they're that. But I'm like, yeah, maybe history is not as kind to the N64 as I am, but all my best gaming memories from that like window of time come from that system.
It's funny. A lot of my best gaming memories come from systems that I didn't even own, because growing up, I only had a Game Boy Pocket and eventually a Game Boy Color, and those were hand-me-downs that I bought off of friends with my allowance. I didn't have a home console until I was in like the 7th grade. My dad got me a GameCube for Christmas, so I played Super Nintendo, Genesis, N64, all of that stuff at friends' houses that actually owned the consoles. In a lot of cases, ironically enough, I wound up beating some of their games before they did. That was always fun. Can I start up my own file on this? Yeah, that's what. Wait, how'd you do that? Oh, I just did this.
Dude, since you brought up Pokemon, you would have loved to have been invited to my, I think it was my 11th or 12th birthday, because it was 11th, because Pokemon Yellow came out, and I got that for my birthday, and then everybody wanted to play like multiplayer games on the N64, and my one friend's like, do you mind if I play Pokemon? I'm like, all right. And he like leveled up my Pikachu to like ridiculous levels over the course of that birthday party. So, Josh,
yeah.
I know you don't listen, but thank you. Dude, my Pikachu is so powerful, you could use a Thunder on an Onix and it would kill it. So, rock type and electricity don't go. But man, that was such a powerful Pikachu, dude.
That's ripped straight out of the anime then.
Yep.
Ash did that too.
Pokemon Yellow was so fun. I know it was the same as Red and Blue with just a few cosmetic changes here and there, but that was my jam.
When you're 10 or 11 years old, those changes are more than enough. Those feel like the world.
The fact that Pikachu could talk when you turned around to him, I was like, oh my god, this is, we've been to the moon, but this is better. It's like fucking Pokemon.
8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10 and 11-year-old Andrew would agree with you, and fuck it, 34-year-old Andrew agrees with you.
Yeah, well, 34-year-old Jeff is high-fiving you somehow. Where's Texas? Which direction am I facing? South is that way. Okay, hopefully you got it. Should be there soon.
All right.
So, Script, how you been, man? I know we just got started, but you've been good. It's been about a month since we've had you on the show?
I believe so. Yeah, I've been mostly well over that time. Obviously, some sad news for the Batman fans has occurred over the past few days. So that's been kind of disappointing. But aside from the personal life things, really, really good. Basically, in a week today will be my 3rd year anniversary with my girlfriend. So yeah, things are going quite well.
Yeah. Well, right on, early congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. You brought up the perfect way we can transition to our first topic that we're going to talk about tonight. Kevin Conroy, Batman, passed away just a few days ago. And now, guys, it was one of those weird situations where I'm on Facebook and somebody posts, hey, Kevin Conroy died. And I went, wait, what? No, they didn't. No, he didn't, because I Googled it right afterwards. And it said, Kevin Conroy is an American actor, blah, blah, blah. About 40 minutes later, the story comes out, and I'm just bummed for the rest of the day. it's Batman. You know, like when Adam West died all those years ago, I was like, no, man, Batman passed away. And now Kevin Conroy, and this is my Batman. So this one hit extra hard. What did you guys think when you heard the news?
Disbelief, really. I mean, he was still relatively young by modern health standards.
He was only 66.
66. He would have been 67 by the end of this month.
He's the same age as my dad.
Yeah, same age as my dad too. 2 months younger than my dad, and my dad passed away years ago. So, yeah, it's weird because he was kind of like, to his fans, he was very much a nurturing, encouraging, father figure to a lot of young boys. Not replacing them, just being the type of guy is like, he understood the value of meeting your heroes, is my understanding of him. Because I sadly never got a chance to meet the guy. I wish I did. Pandemic actually circumvented a lot of options that I had to meet him, unfortunately. But yeah, it's pretty disbelief and sad, and I feel for his family, his husband, his friends, everyone for this shocking loss, because I don't think anyone in the fandom knew he was suffering from cancer.
No. I don't think anybody did. It came as a shock to me, though. I will say the last couple of recent images that I had seen of him, he was looking on the frail side. He was not looking physically healthy at all, but I didn't really pay it any mind at that point. And I guess, to be fair, I didn't actually know how old he was. So I didn't know he was only in his mid-60s. But yeah, man, like Jeff said, Kevin Conroy was my Batman. I was born in the late 80s, so I grew up through the 90s. So my Batman was, apart from comic books, because I'm a comic book guy, was the animated series Batman. Whether it was Batman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, Justice League Animated, Justice League Unlimited. And then into my young adult years, he reprised his role as the Dark Knight in the Batman Arkham games. And so and he's done numerous DC animated films beyond that. So it is not much of a stretch to say that he is the voice of Batman for a lot of people. When I'm reading a comic that has Batman in it, I'm hearing his voice when I'm reading the lines. Anytime I see a picture of Batman, I hear his voice in the back of my head. It was a pretty rough thing to see it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? You can't be serious. And then when it was revealed a couple of days later that it was cancer, I was like, oh, son of a, are you freaking serious?
Yeah. I'm looking at the chat, people talking about watching the shows in honor. Like this weekend, we watched the World's Finest 3-parter where Batman meets Superman, and that's, in my eyes, still the best DC cartoon they ever put out. It still holds up fucking 25 years later. And
it holds up immensely well. I was watching it the other night.
That's my that's not my favorite series or my favorite episode that Batman ever appears in, but that's my favorite series of just I don't know, DC on screen. Finding that as a kid was just so exciting, and it's always been underscored by Conroy. He's Batman. I know it. We talk about we have these conversations. It's, oh, who's the best? Is it Keaton? Is it Kilmer? Is it Clooney? I never says Clooney, but we say the names. We ask who it is, and
it's Conroy.
Yeah. The only other actor who is a voice actor that stands above the live action is Mark Hamill, and they both come from the animated series. We had the best of everything back then. We just didn't know it.
And we didn't realize that we weren't going to have it as long as we thought we would.
No. It's so sad. And I didn't know he had cancer. And the one thing I just wanted to bring up, too, is I had no clue, nor did I care that he was gay. I've seen so many articles that want to talk about his sexuality, and I think that's fine, but he's Batman. It doesn't really matter. I think
the only emphasis people are putting on that in some of the access media, which is pretty irritating to me. It's I don't care. The man was a talent. The man, as I understand, was a kind human being. He loved his fans. One of my good friends, the day that he passed and they announced it, she sent me a picture of her getting to meet Kevin Conroy, and she was just like, I I don't have words right now. It's like, who cares at the end of the day? Like, what? He was an actor and a talented one at that, and a kind human being at that. Look at I don't know why his name's escaping me right now, but he played Barney in How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, Neil Patrick Harris.
Neil Patrick Harris, one of the most talented actors that I have seen because of his ridiculous acting range, and he plays the straightest guy on TV, and he couldn't be further from that. And who cares? He's an actor. I don't care.
Exactly.
Why is that the emphasis? It shouldn't be. That's not what I'm not remembering him for who he slept with. I'm remembering him for what he brought to the medium and enriched not just mine, but so many people's lives. In this space, we do a lot of negative talk about the present state of superheroes and mainstream media and all of that. But I can probably safely speak for everybody here when I say that growing up, characters like Batman and Superman and all of these other heroes, Spider-Man, these characters meant something to us growing up. They represented something for us, where there was something to strive towards or something to hold on to. And that's not blowing smoke up anybody's ass. That's just how it is. And that's something of value that someone like Kevin Conroy brought to a lot of people's lives. And not just young boys, but especially young boys. And that's what I remember him for.
Well, he realized that a lot, because you will find, just with a quick Google search, you will find thousands of stories where Kevin Conroy does the same thing because he knows the fans love it. And it'll basically be surprising the fans by getting on a microphone or shouting from behind a kitchen door or something. The line he said in Nothing to Fear, I am the night, I am darkness, I am Batman. He loved doing that because he got always the best reaction out of the fans. You will find thousands of different stories of what that's all set up.
It brought fans joy.
And it's something that he had a great joy doing as well. And part of me is like wondering, how many times are you going to find an actor who has such reverence for that role and understands what it means to the audience that fell in love with it as well? Like, you don't often get that. And lots of people attribute it to the Grey Ghost episode, where Batman comes to as a character. He's like, I am meeting my childhood hero. And the actor is not exactly who he expects him to be, but then he becomes the person he expects him to be, the Grey Ghost. And that's a
great episode.
It's a sweet and endearing episode. And then, the end of it, Bruce Wayne, hands the box set over for an autograph, and then says, I used to watch him as a kid with my father. And it was just so touching, and it hits you right in the heartstrings. And it's like, do you think Kevin Conroy had that perspective going into the episode, but then after doing it realized, what, I'm probably going to meet kids? Because he already had seen the first the Christmas with the Joker with Mark Hamill by that point, because it had to be re-recorded. So he's probably thinking like, man, yeah, because this is that was episode 18, I think, in the production order. So they'd already had a couple, they'd already seen a few of them at that point. And I would not be surprised if he thought, kids are probably going to have the same approach to this show that Bruce Wayne does to the Grey Ghost, and possibly to how, him at a time loved the Adam West series, because that's what he said in one of his interviews. He was a kid when that came out, and that's what he knew mostly. I wonder if that was what helped, kind of break that ego aspect. Because unfortunately, unless you can find a Comic-Con video out there of him talking about it, that's one of the few questions that I don't really hear answers.
Yeah. Well, that's something that we don't see nearly often enough when it comes to talents in Hollywood, and that's this idea of recognizing that you're playing and representing a hero, a symbol for good, a symbol for righteousness on screen, and therefore you should be trying your damnedest to portray that in your real life, because there are going to be kids that, like with me, I grew up watching Batman the Animated Series when I was in single digits, and there are a lot of kids that grew up watching, some of the early MCU films when they were in single digits. It's crazy to think about for me because I'm 34, but you look at that and then you look at the contrast to how somebody like Kevin Conroy handled himself, and then how somebody like, say, Mark Ruffalo handles himself, or some of these other people. You have your one-offs out there, like Johnny Depp, who would just out of the blue go to St. Jude's hospitals types of things, dressed up as Jack Sparrow to entertain these terminally ill kids, things like that. That you don't see that often, where the performer takes it upon themselves to embody the goodness of the character that they were playing for a paycheck, and deciding to take that with them into their daily lives and to project that out into their lives and out to people that are around them and enhance their lives like that, or enrich their lives. We don't see that often enough. But Kevin Conroy was one of those guys that did that.
He was. I really regret not ever having the chance to meet him, because you mentioned Mark Ruffalo, you mentioned these people that are great with the fans, and yeah, of course it's going to be boring to say I'm Batman 10,000 times, but goddamn, the dude never stopped. And it's, I was going to use the example like Brie Larson a couple years back.
Yeah.
She was so whatever about Captain Marvel. But we'll just use Mark Ruffalo again. Like when he dies, you'll get a specific amount of people on the internet that'll tweet RIP Hulk, and that's about it. These, by being that kind of closed off, inaccessible, and douchey celebrity about certain things, it turns people off. And when you play a superhero, like look at Dean Cain. Dean Cain revels in the fact that he was Superman, still talks about certain things. It's cool. Like, there's nothing worse than when somebody, like Harrison Ford, love him to death, he's my favorite actor, but it still bothers me that it's like, the thing that made him a star, he just fucking hates, and just doesn't let it go. It's like, look, dude, the audience, it's like, I'm glad he found a new life as grumpy Harrison Ford, because it's like getting tiresome to hear some old millionaire bitch constantly, Star Wars. Motherfucker, give all your money back to the fans. Hell, I spent fucking $3,000 on Indiana Jones toys in 2008. Can I have that
it's like,
back,
what do you have to be grumpy about? You were a character in the greatest sci-fi epic of our time, and you had nothing about you that actually made you unique to that property. You didn't use a lightsaber, you didn't have the Force, you weren't special in that regard, but there were so many millions of fans who liked you over every other character. Why are you bitching?
Because he liked
That
playing
bothers
Indiana
me.
Jones more than Han Solo. That's unfortunately the sad.
And that's
That's
fine. You
sad
can
for me.
have a preference with the roles that you've had, but I don't know. Maybe I'm projecting an older ideal of how Hollywood celebrities should portray themselves and present themselves in public upon him. But it's like, dude, be grateful to the people. Like, if nobody went and saw that movie, you wouldn't have gotten the deals for the sequels, and then you probably would have burned out your career, because nobody would have given a damn after that.
No, and I prefer Indiana Jones to Han Solo most days of the week, because it's just a more interesting character. But I just can't get behind that. And it's like, look, dude, you're the most recognizable actor on the planet. You don't need to go kiss everyone's ass, but look at how The Rock does it. Black Adam isn't that successful. Black Adam isn't that well received. But what's the narrative, Andrew? Hey, the fans love it, and we're so proud to bring you something that the fans love.
And that is a huge differentiation there. He is treating every fan like they just made that movie $1.5 billion. That's the difference. That's the difference between a celebrity that I can respect just as a human being. I don't, remove any political affiliations, any of that. I don't give a crap. How they act as human beings towards the people that are making their paychecks. That movie just barely crossed 350 million, I think. So, it's over breaking even, but not by much. I would honestly like to see it make a lot more, because I have a lot of fun with it. It's not a perfect movie. It's not even a great movie, but it's a fun comic book movie. And because of the good time that I had with it, I would like to see it be a lot more successful than it's done so far. That being said, that has not changed how The Rock has treated the fans on social media and outside of it. Like I said, he's treating the fans like this thing's at $1.5 billion.
I mean, and you know, I've been a huge Rock fan for a long time. That's always been his gimmick, and I don't know if it's even a gimmick at this point. It's kind of like he's been the people's champ, fans first, fans that. Before John Cena was doing Make-A-Wish, Rock was getting that stuff. So it's like the people that take the extra time are the ones that are truly immortal. Like Kevin Conroy will live forever. Beyond his Batman voice, fans will remember him as just this guy that when they say don't meet your heroes, well, you should have met Kevin Conroy because he made you feel like Batman was real. And he made us all think Batman was real too with his performance. And I just, you know, it's interesting the conversations you have around people when they die. If you know them, if you don't know them, it always reflects who they are. And, you know, this is a part of our childhood, our collective childhood. Enrique in the chat, you and I, tons of people are roughly the same age. And so we grew up in the single digits watching this cartoon. Hell, I remember when this show debuted. Like, I vividly remember when it came out in 92.
Yeah,
that was my... Dude, it was so awesome.
I was 4 years old.
Yeah. I was about to be 4. I was 3 and change, man. And, like, put it like this. This show has been, it means so much. I even went into my special collection this week and I pulled out, like, my old Batman from McDonald's. And then I got this Batman that I keep on the desk.
Yeah,
like,
I've got
it's
about
Batman.
6. I've got 1, 2, 3. I've got 3 Batman the Animated Series action figures on my desk. And then they're with Batman 89 action figures and some Superman and some DC superhero from the 80s and 70s toys. I've always had them on there just because they're toys from my childhood. And also it's like, oh, this is kind of like the closest representation of what Batman should be at all times. Like the original 85 episodes of the animated series, you know, some of them have their downs, but most of them are all like way too good for what they should be for a cartoon show in the 90s.
Especially when it was geared towards kids. I say this a lot. And I like to use Mary as an example, a perfect example, really. Mary Mayhem, for those of you in the chat who are not aware. So I come from comic books, as does Jeff. There's a stark difference in most cases between Batman in the comic books and what we see in the live action adaptations. Like they'll hit like a couple of things and then they'll miss everything else in most cases. However, it's pretty well established that the 90s animated series, especially in DC, did a great job of capturing the core of all of the characters from the comic books and presenting them in animated format. If you watch Batman the Animated Series, you understand Batman as a character. You might not necessarily have all the context that somebody who's grown up reading the comics has. You might not understand literally everything, but you're going to have a strong grasp on who you think Batman is and who Batman should be. And Batman the Animated Series, like Script said, this show had no business being as good as it was for a cartoon that was geared towards kids. Honestly, like it tackled a lot of things. It's actually very similar to and man, this just makes me miss the 90s all the more every time I think about this. Like 90s X-Men. 90s X-Men, if you go back and rewatch as an adult, there are a lot of episodes where you're like, holy shit, they were talking about some deep shit here.
Yeah.
But you don't think about it when you're a kid because the show wasn't talking down to its audience. It was just telling a good story with characters that people could latch on to and enjoy, but telling it in a way that wasn't preaching, even though there was a message. There absolutely was a message. So it was a universal truth. But it was concepts that you don't realize until you're an adult. And when you are an adult and you go back and you rewatch those, you go, wow. So that's why I think this way. That's why I understand this thing to be right or this thing to be wrong. Like this show was talking about it when I was 6 years old.
These shows dealt with things that you would like take 3 steps back if you tried to even think about introducing them into a children's entertainment program, but it made sense. It helped it helped us out. I think it made us ready for the world at an earlier age by understanding how people were different, how things worked, how it's like it just sets you up for life. And I'm going to use X-Men for an example. Like there's a great episode with Nightcrawler where where you watch Wolverine pray. I don't need to watch my superheroes get down on their knees. It's not like something I need, but it's so powerful.
That's a really deep and powerful episode.
The whole one, man. And they would never, ever touch on a Catholicism-based episode, even if it's part of the character's core. They don't have the balls to do that because somebody will get offended on Twitter. Somebody will take arms up online. Who gives a shit? If you're going to tell a great story, like, it's 30 years later and we're talking about this shit still. I don't even want to talk about Black Panther that I saw 36 hours ago. That's how stupid that fucking thing was. But I could talk about Batman the Animated Series forever.
Well, one thing that's actually quite
you could talk about
fascinating.
Batman Forever? Is that what you're saying?
Well, Batman Forever's got some points to it too.
Didn't mean to interrupt you, Script. Sorry, I saw
That's
an opportunity.
Okay.
Jeff gave me a
one
layup.
thing that you can actually do with Batman the Animated Series that actually irks a lot of woke people, and that is the series is technically created by Jean McCurdy, who is head of Warner Brothers Animation at the time, and she hired Bruce Timm to help develop it. But it was her baby, and she was legendary. I mean, she's still alive, but she was a legendary producer at Warner Brothers Animation in the 90s. She's the reason why you have the DC animated universe. Like, because she's the one that said we have to keep this serious. She got Andrea Romano to come in and do series directing. She was putting the team together to get all these guys. She took writers from He-Man and Masters of the Universe to come in on board and do this. And even some of the guys that worked on the original Batman Adventures from the 70s who were basically saying, we don't want to do this because you have to have Batman punching people. And she's like, no, we're going to make Batman punch people. And they're like, what, really? It's like, yeah.
Yeah, they had the balls to do that. If you guys go back and watch Spider-Man, the animated series from the 90s, if you pay attention, he doesn't punch people.
No,
he's not allowed.
He's not allowed to. Because Fox had no stones whatsoever.
Well, it wasn't so much Fox. It was part Fox Kids because, again, Batman had their distribution through Fox Kids as well. It was basically the production side of things said, Warner Brothers Animation said, we're doing this. And Fox had their own standards and practices that they wanted, and sort of the general network affiliates. But they said, well, we're doing this, and you can either broadcast the show or we'll find another way to broadcast it. And they just decided to say, okay, we'll let you broadcast it. The only issues that they had to really fight for was showing a little bit of blood and the level of violence that they could get away with on screen. Like there's a lot of times where Batman's going to be hit by a pipe, but we don't actually see the contact of the pipe to hitting Batman. It's cut away, and you just hear the grunt. But then they found out, we can do really nasty stuff to robots. So that's how you got the Hardak three episodes where the robots are being crushed by elevators, but they look like humans, and Batman gets acid on his robot. Batman gets acid on his face, and he's got like the metal skull coming through. Like they've had fun with that type of stuff because they realize that just because we say it's a robot, we can do horrible things to it in animation side. They're like, we're gonna have fun with that, and especially also with like the plant. Like Poison Ivy's plant stuff that they would do, and the poison gas and all that stuff. They really love that. But what's also fascinating, and sadly Bruce Timm possibly doesn't think this way anymore, but at the time he fought against messaging in the cartoons for Batman the Animated Series, like the general social commentary messaging, because he said it only becomes a backdrop that highlights a problem, because you don't have enough time in a 22-minute cartoon show to actually solve it or present a solution. And that's why he felt like one of the episodes, the one where Batman loses his memory and as a homeless guy and then is taken away. He felt like that was one of the worst ones because it was more about the message of homeless. And then on top of that, when they were just doing the storyboards for it and they wanted to show a homeless family, so a father, a mother, and a child on the street, they were told by basic standards and practices that you can't have the mother and the child. Only men can be homeless. And there's now we're really losing the impact of this issue. So, and even though I actually really do like that episode a lot, it's one of the things that Bruce Timm uses as an argument. It's like, we're a cartoon show. We can talk about abstract universal truths, but social messaging is not something we should really be doing because it's too short of a venue. And I think that's why the animated series, compared to some of the cartoons that are coming out currently, will outlast it for decades. It's all about just those character moments, the mission at hand, the mystery, solving the crime, the relationship between Batman, Robin, Alfred, later on Batgirl, James Gordon. All those dynamics there are what make the show, and not so much the fact that, oh, we're talking about crime, or oh, we're talking about homelessness, or oh, we're talking about disenfranchised. Like, those things aren't factor, and that shows why it's been able to hold up for 30 plus years, and will probably hold up at least another 30 without any question.
Yeah, I don't ever foresee that show going away because, yes, it has all the positivity and exactly what you were saying. It has that, but it also has a design that was so different, and it's still ahead of its time. And like the Fleischer Superman cartoons, if you compare that to other things at its time, it was head and shoulders above what they were producing at other studios. And same with Batman. Like, yes, we brought up X-Men, we talked about the religious episode and the heavy themes, but like, just on a base level, Batman was a higher quality show. It was made better. They had an 18-month production cycle versus the X-Men's 9, and
Yeah.
I think every element that was put into that show was at the highest level that it could be, and that's why that show will last 30 plus more years, 40, 50. The thing is, it was so timeless when it came out. It can't really be linked to 1992. Nothing about that show says 92 at all. Except
No, just when they use the
Grey
dates, like in
Yep.
the Grey Ghost, the only time
Yep.
you really see the date, it's like September 1992 on the Time magazine cover or mock-up. It's like that's the only thing that dates it, but everything else about it is it blends various decades to the point where it makes itself timeless just on the Dark Deco approach as well.
Well, they very deliberately made the visual aesthetic kind of ambiguous as well. To where
Sorry, say that again?
if I said they very deliberately made the visual aesthetic kind of ambiguous as well in terms of the time period. Like, you could look at the design of some of the vehicles in there and say, oh, okay, that kind of shares some similarities with this decade. But then there are other things you were like, well, wait, that's completely different. And I think that's one of those things that makes it kind of a timeless setting.
So, folks, in a moment, we will give you a recap of what you missed when the stream did time out. Don't worry. We kind of haven't gone too far off of where we were, but we will continue. Because that was silly, that thing that it cut off like that. I even got an email about it, but we're back. This platform is ridiculous. We're going to continue to grow on other platforms too. So, just follow World Class Bullshitters and Jeff Hicks wherever we go. That's all I'll say. One thing, Script Doctor, you brought up earlier talking about the Jean McCurdy, how it's her production and she hired Bruce Timm. I find it interesting that for the modern day woke people or whatever that want to complain about representation in these rooms, these writers' rooms, X, Y, and Z, all of the shows from the 90s, both Fox Kids and other, really, it was women that were in charge of this stuff. You had Margaret Lesh at Fox, who brought X-Men and Power Rangers and had been working with Stan Lee for decades. And then you had Jean McCurdy over at Fox Animation, who was greenlighting this show and wanting it to be realistic and really understanding the tone. And that's where I always roll my eyes and like to the fucking skies when people want to talk about, we need these writers' voices or this person. It's like, look, we've had the thing that people are fighting for decades. Just because a woman's in charge or a woman makes the decision doesn't mean it has to be girl power or female focused or shit like over at Star Wars. Like, for God's sakes, we're going to talk about it in a moment. They can't get enough people to watch Disney Plus, so they're desperately going to put their shows on regular terrestrial television and cable to get you to watch it. Like, come on, man. This is Star Wars and Disney. Did you know in the 80s, they didn't even want to put Star Wars on TV because they thought it diminished the brand? Like, that's how big it was back then. They're like, no, people will go back to see Star Wars in theaters forever.
They would air Star Wars on TV like once a year, and that would be near Thanksgiving and Christmas. That was it. Like, that was because that was the first time I saw the original trilogy, because obviously I grew up in the late 80s and 90s, and so, like, I didn't get to see those in theaters. I saw the first Star Wars movies I saw in theaters were the prequels. But I got to see the OT on TV it was either near Thanksgiving or Christmas. It was a special. I forget which network it was, but that's how I saw those. SJWs make me laugh so freaking frequently. They're so unbelievably desperate to portray themselves as the heroes that not only do they fabricate villains to attempt to slay and to fight against and to advocate against, but they also like they're the first ones and groundbreakers and glass ceiling shatterers of doing all of these things. It's like all you have to do is look 20 years ago, and everything that you're talking about championing and doing, that's already been done. It was done better. Those people weren't insufferable twats. You're obnoxious. Not only were they not insufferable twats, they also put out good content. You have succeeded in neither of those ventures. Go away. Stop acting like you are breaking new ground. Not only are you not breaking new ground, you are doing it in an inferior fashion. Oh, you're pulling up that up. Dude, that image hit me in the feels when I saw that. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Dude, I had seen this earlier, but I hadn't read it. So, folks out there who can't read this on your screen or listening in at home, it is a comic book panel. On the first panel, it says, "You're pretty quiet today." And that's Commissioner Gordon talking to Batman. Quieter than usual, at least. Batman opens his utility belt, pulls out a piece of paper, scribbles a note, and says, "Jim, I'm sorry, I've lost my voice. I will make contact later." And he uses his grappling hook and swings off. Jim Gordon says, "Of course." In the background, there's a picture of Kevin Conroy being projected on a building. And he goes, "I'm sorry for your loss, old friend." And Batman thinks to himself, "So am I." So, yeah, this is awesome. Not the moment, but a great, great tribute.
Right there, this is pretty ridiculous. I didn't think about this was it yesterday that I sent you that? Or the day before yesterday? Looking at this panel now in the context of the conversation that we've been having, it's such a stark contrast to the lack of emotion, lack of sincerity, and lack of just reaching out to the human spirit that modern day comics and the mainstream have done. There's so much in just this handful of panels. So much. And this comic could have been pulled out of the mid-90s when I was buying the DC comic series that was literally just like each issue was one of the episodes of the animated series. Do you remember those, Jeff?
I do.
Those are fantastic.
Those are great.
I would get those from the grocery store when I would help my mom go grocery shopping. Like if I was helpful and all that, she would grab me one of the Batman animated series comic books, and I was over the moon. And it was a nice equivalent exchange. I was happy to do it, and this could have been pulled straight from that. This is truly a beautiful tribute.
It is. There really isn't a bunch to say about it outside of it's wonderful, and it makes me sad that he's passed away, but I have wanted to watch so much Batman. Because I was worried at first. I was like, man, when I watch the cartoon again, is it going to be weird thinking, oh man, he's gone, it's tough. But I hope this comes out the way I mean it. He transcended himself and everything and just kind of embodied the character. So it's like the character is always out there on screen in animation.
Yeah.
And so I kind of watched it and was like, yeah, Batman's still out there. Batman lives. Batman this. So I was very sad for Kevin Conroy's passing, but it almost is like reminded me why I love this show so much. And I'm happy that it's on Blu-ray. I'm happy that it's such a well-loved show and that Warner Brothers has preserved it in the proper way. Marvel cartoons that we all grew up with in the 90s, I love them to death. The X-Men cartoon, there are elements of the X-Men cartoon I like more than Batman the Animated Series, but X-Men is treated like shit. Disney is too cheap to remaster it. It's on Disney Plus in 480p.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like trash.
Both the X-Men and Spider-Man animated series on Disney Plus that have been uploaded onto there look awful. They look so bad. It's like I remember these episodes. I remember having a wonderful time growing up and watching these, but this shows, it's really emblematic and a testament to how little of a shit they give about these characters and these properties that they can't even be bothered to remaster them. Whereas you look over it, and I'm not going to give DC too many accolades here because they've shat all over their brand as well. But at least with their animated series from the 90s, they've remastered them. They've cleaned them up so that when you're streaming them on HBO Max, or if anybody remembers a few years ago when they had the DC Universe or DC Infinite, whatever it was
DC
called.
Universe.
I signed up for
that.
They screwed up with Superman though, because at the end of the third three-parter, you can see, because when they were animating Superman, the animated series, they did it digitally, but they also did it with using chroma key effects. So they'd actually animate on top of green, and then they chroma key in another animation.
I remember the episode. I believe they've gone back since, and I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, because I bought the digital when it first debuted, and it's like, oh, why the heck is Lex Luthor in his office and there's a green screen behind him? And you realize, oh yeah, it's because that's what they did, because you're supposed to see Superman float in the background, but they didn't key it properly on the remaster. And Warner Brothers has done this, unfortunately, for a lot of their shows because these all debuted after they had shut down their Warner Brother at-home video department distribution center to a degree. So, like, if you watch the old Lois and Clark series on HBO Max, all the music that they owned at that time for the show has all been changed. So if there's like a band that they bought the rights to, and maybe even are the album, they're the producers of, they swapped them out with another song. And then on top of that, they're missing special effects after shots. They're missing sound cues. They're missing color correction. Like they scanned all the original footage, but they just didn't complete the compositing and just pumped it out so fast that it's messed up. Like Kryptonite doesn't make the glowing hum sound in some of their episodes. Some of the times the Kryptonite's not even green, it's blue, because they used actual hard light blue in camera effects, and they color corrected it after the fact. They forgot to do that. But for Batman the Animated Series, it's immaculate when they did the Blu-ray transfer. It is. They even get rid of the little black dust spot that is on Batman's face in the opening title credits, because they were all annoyed that happened and they couldn't fix it at the time because they just didn't have the money. But when they got the remastering opportunity, they're like, making sure we're getting rid of that black dot on Batman's face. Then that first close-up shot in the opening title, and it's like, damn, it's crazy, and it's such a great Blu-ray set. So I highly recommend get it if you can.
I own it. I pre-ordered it the day you could pre-order it, and
Same.
it arrived the first day. I don't like Funko Pops, but I even collected the deluxe edition that comes with the little mini Funko Pop people and I think there was a Batmobile or some kind of thing. It was like 3 little toys. I was like, I got to get the best version. It's this show, and it deserves the best. Andrew, I want to give DC a little credit because like their entire animated catalog is getting remastered to the point where they're back in the 70s now with the 70s Batman TV show about to get a Blu-ray release. They Warner Brothers in their animation, I guess they're proud of it. It's one of the few things they still have or had that differentiated them from only one other studio, or only one other studio could do that as well as live action. And I just wish that their live action properties, they put as much thought as they do into the animated ones being preserved, because it's like a weird. Back in the day, it was like, man, if only they could be as good as the cartoons, these movies would be awesome. And then they got really good, the movies, and now they've gotten back to the point where we're like, man, if only these could be as good as the cartoon, these movies would be awesome.
Well, you know what's missing from that? It's called the writer's hunger. So Paul Dini, Alan Burnett, Bruce Timm, Michael Reeves, those guys were really hungry still, because they'd only been working in the industry maybe about 10 years at that point, and they didn't know what job they're going to have next after that. So when you have that hunger and you have that desperation to write the best thing you can within a short amount of time, because of how much of a window they're given before they have to hit air date, you really are kind of overclocking your mind, so to speak, to get it done. And the one way that Warner Brothers can capture that again on their live action side is again to find really good, young, talented, hungry writers that want to tell these stories, or at least tell something that can be the next step after this. So if Batman the Animated Series is the foundation you're going to work on for the DCAU, and you want to transition to live action, you'd have to go back to those show Bibles of what was their mandate when writing this series, and say, okay, how can we reappropriate this for the live action market and exploit what we can do in live action that we couldn't do in animation without sacrificing what made the animation take on it the one that lasts and is now like considered by the majority of fans the definitive interpretation. That's going to take some Herculean level of argumentation to a lot of studio execs, and also a lot of new talent that they'd be searching, that they'd be looking for to execute that. It's a huge feat. I don't cross your fingers that James Gunn can do that under Zaslav's auspices, but it all depends on if they have that same type of reverence and mentality to take, like, what's the most successful Batman thing we've ever done, and it is the animated series. It may not be on the dollar side of things, but on the reputation side, on the fact that it's got the least amount of negative criticism towards it compared to any other Batman property to exist. That's your golden goose right there. That should be what you're modeling things off of. I would say don't copy it, but just try and capture that spirit and carry it through. And I think Marvel will basically just be Thanos away as a result of that.
Well, what you said, I want to touch on something that you mentioned there. Capture the spirit. That's the exact thing that's been missing from virtually every adaptation for the last handful of years. These writers don't either have the talent or the desire to put in the effort that it takes to capture the spirit and the core of a character while still telling a new story, because you can do both, but it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of talent, it takes a lot of skill.
I mean, I have a list of writers you should never hire for characters like Batman, starting with Akiva Goldsman, David S. Goyer, Dave Callahan, Chris Chibnall.
Anybody that's been associated with the CW, really.
Chris Terrio, who he wrote Batman v Superman and The Rise of Skywalker. And Joss Whedon, keep him far away from it. He's not the team.
No, Joss Whedon is not equipped to handle a character like Batman.
Yeah,
there are characters he can do just fine. Batman is not among them.
I would even keep. I know a lot of people still have reference for Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan. I'd still keep them away because they care so much more about the realism that they conflate the realism with reality, and that's the one thing you have to remember is when they were doing the show Bible for this, they were talking about realism, and they were talking about it in the same regards as you have to make the universe so believable that we ourselves believe it. You reflect, you cross over little bits of actual reality, but you allow the fantastical to also feel normal. And it's so, and I do really like Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, but that's taking it from the approach of we're just going to take Batman out of his world and put him in our world. Whereas you as a writer and a filmmaker, you need to take the audience out of their world and bring them into yours. And that's what you got to do. And that's what Batman the Animated Series did. Superman the Animated Series, I think, did that quite successfully. And the Justice League series did that really well. And the level of being able to balance all of those characters and make them have an impact is expert level. You never thought it could have been done, but they did it and blows you away.
People sleep on the Superman animated series. They forget how good that show was.
I know a lot of people have issues with it because Superman's not as powerful compared to his other interpretations. I'm not too bothered by that, but I know they didn't do that for a writing purpose. They did that for a stakes purpose, which is a little bit different. Like they wanted to make sure that they themselves couldn't write themselves out of a problem by saying Superman can just blow out a star that's going supernova. They just wanted to make sure that the stakes could be there, and that you could balance the consequences.
Well, I even disagree with people's assessment in that regard, because around the time that series was coming out, it wasn't too far removed from, it was still a handful of years, but it wasn't so far removed from Crisis on Infinite Earths, where there was kind of a reset, and Superman's powers had kind of reset in a little bit.
Yeah.
The character John Byrne really did something to that.
The character was handled quite differently from that moment on, and Superman is one of those characters that is as powerful as the story needs him to be. That's just how he's written, and good writers can make that believable and make it work. Bad writers cannot. And Superman the animated series, I never saw as anything but writers just utilizing him while he was at a certain point in his powers. Because, sure, if I want to talk Superman 1,000,000, okay, yeah, he's been living in a star for tens of thousands of years. Nothing's going to defeat him. Fine. That doesn't make for particularly interesting storytelling. I'm totally fine with him not being this all-powerful being in this specific moment, this pie slice of his life and his existence. You could easily slot that time period into shortly after Crisis on Infinite Earths, or shortly after, or even shortly before the death of Superman comic book series, and then the return of Superman. Like, it's not difficult to do. People forget that Superman is a character that, depending on how talented the writer is, you can do a lot of things with him, as far as like, what powers do you feel like he needs to be able to utilize at this point in time? Which ones do you think he doesn't? It all comes down to understanding what people want to see out of a Superman story. And sometimes that even a truly talented writer can make readers realize that they're seeing and getting something out of a Superman story that they didn't even realize they wanted to see.
Well, that's basically by saying Superman shouldn't be treated like a blunt instrument.
Yeah, well, because he's more than that.
Exactly. It's how
he's more than, let's just call in Big Blue and then end this.
Yeah, it's like how. Yeah, exactly. I'm always of the mind of how can we take the powers that we know Superman has, don't have to add any new ones, but how can we use them in very clever and inventive ways that really reinforces the fact that, yes, he is named appropriately as Superman.
Superman shouldn't feel like a Deus Ex Machina.
Exactly.
He shouldn't feel like the MacGuffin of a story. It's like, oh, well, the rest of us can't beat this character. Let's just call in Big Blue. End of story.
But it's also the same approach when it comes to Batman. It's like he has a utility belt, but he shouldn't always be rescued because of the utility belts. That it's a magic belt that can pull anything he needs at that moment. It's like, no, let's give him some rules. Let's give him a number of good gadgets to have, and let's find really creative, inventive ways that he can use those to his advantage, because it's more about the wits and less about the technology. And for Superman, it should be more about the wits and less about the superpowers. And the same thing for Wonder Woman and then Flash and Green Lantern, especially. A guy who can create any construct that he can imagine. It should always be like, how clever can those constructs be that you would never otherwise think of? Because that's the fun of Green Lantern.
Yeah.
Please don't bring up Green Lantern, because all I can do is think about what a missed opportunity that movie was. But
there's yeah, that's Berlanti. I forgot his first name.
Greg
Berlanti. Greg Berlanti wrote that, and it's like, you write a movie, you write a Green Lantern movie, you get it directed by the guy who rebooted James Bond twice, and they still couldn't get a hit out of that. That's how bad that script was.
Yeah, Martin Campbell's like an unsung hero of Hollywood, because he can, like you said, reboot James Bond twice. He can do Zorro, and then Green Lantern. You know, Andrew and Script, it's been nice hearing you guys talk and give some love to Superman the Animated Series, because when I popped on that 3-part episode of World's Finest, there was a small window of time where, like, that show was everything. Like 1996 when it debuted, I was hooked, because Batman was on. Batman, was on for years, but it was in that weird window right before the relaunch of the reanimated style and all that stuff. So, it was still on every day, but like Superman was exciting and new, and it was different. And that's my favorite rendition of the character. I love Christopher Reeve. I love, other stuff. But that cartoon, I'm glad you brought up the depowered stuff too, because it makes it interesting. Like with the episodes that I was watching, the Joker, who's just a guy, was able to get the upper hand over Superman a couple times. And it made it interesting. It's like, oh, Superman's vulnerable to kryptonite. Well, he comes in wearing this suit that's covered head to toe, so the kryptonite can't get in. Well, the Joker just so happens to have a flower that spits acid, and then Superman's weakened and can take a kick and stuff. It just makes the show more interesting, and I think that's why I have a a level of patience with Superman that most people don't these days, because I know you can. There's a part of the formula where you can make it interesting every week, make it exciting, and make it have stakes. But like, pre-crisis Superman, where he's going to Mexico and tunneling a new whatever to irrigate the world and all this crap, it was boring and overpowered. I mean, the character needed that, and I'm glad that people like that show still. I'm glad it's been preserved as well. It's almost as good as Batman.
It is, and that show was one of the flagships for the WB network and WB Kids animation that came out that year. I remember that was a huge thing for a lot of kids, and I was shocked by it. The only reason they changed the animation style is just so that when they were outsourcing it to the other animation companies, they could maintain the consistency. Because one of the things that they were bothered with the animated series is that sometimes they were using, I think, 3 or 4 different animation companies overseas, and there would be some inconsistencies between the episodes. Like the models, they're the same, but there's certain levels of quality that changed. In some episodes, Batman would be humongous, and in other episodes, he'd be far more conservatively built, but still impressive. And they had an issue of that. But when they switched over to the other styles, like, this is how it is. These are the models exactly as they are. It's done through computers, and we do the inking here in house at Warner Brothers, but we outsource the actual like animation stuff prior. It really saved. I mean, I know a lot of people didn't like it too much, especially the Joker redesign. I don't blame them for that, because that was.
I wasn't a fan of the redesign of the Joker.
That was a mistake, but they corrected that for Batman Beyond.
Yeah.
And JLU. But yeah, like that's kind of why they did it. I really do like the models that they used in the Justice League Unlimited series.
Well, the success of the Batman animated and the Superman animated series, the solo series, led to them being able to do Justice League, and that introduced a lot of characters to a whole new generation of people. I was already familiar at that point with a few of them, because the very first comic books that I ever held in my hands were The Flash, Zero, and Superman the Man of Steel, Zero, which were the issues immediately following the 0 Hour Crisis in Time event in DC comic books history, for those of you that are familiar with that. But being able to see a lot of these characters animated was huge for me. Like, seeing my character as the Flash, and specifically Wally West Flash. That is if I have to pick one superhero above all, it's him, be it Marvel or DC. And he was handled so well in the DC animated universe of the 90s. He was the heart of every single episode that he was a part of. And that's important, because that's actually integral to his character. That's how he's in the comic books. He's intended to be incredibly relatable, incredibly fun, lighthearted. He loves life. He loves what he does. He's not a hero who came about being a hero because of some great tragedy, or he's an alien or whatever, or a demigod. He was just a fan, and he was given this gift of being able to become the thing that he loved and looked up to the most, and he treasures that. And you see that kind of heart, and that heart was just imbued into all of those characters. Like, I loved getting to see Supergirl in the Justice League Unlimited show. Like, I have a fairly expensive statue of that Supergirl that was rendered by art journal Stanley Lau. Because of that, those 90s shows truly captured the heart of these characters.
Yeah, they did, and the people that made them felt proud to carry on the tradition. I wonder if that's a thing with today. I mean, it is a thing with today, but I wonder if that's one of the reasons why people are so, I don't know, they miss the mark. It's like they don't want to follow tradition. Guys like us, Andrew, let's say hypothetically, DC calls tomorrow and says, hey, do you want to write The Flash? You're going to take it with the most serious way you could possibly. If Marvel said, hey, do you want to draw Spider-Man? Shit, I'm going to treat it with the most reverence possible.
I am not even exaggerating. I would go back and start rereading from frickin' Flash comics with Jay Garrick.
Ooh.
I would start way the hell back, because I would want to be utilizing, or at least have the option of pulling threads from as far back as I possibly could. I would read all the way from there up until when DC Comics stopped being good.
I mean, that's kind of what Greg Weisman did with the Young Justice cartoon. I mean, I think those first 2 seasons are great. Third season was a miss. Fourth season was pretty good. But they really did kind of meld a lot of all of the variations of DC characters into one kind of more cohesive world. And you have also Bruce Greenwood, who I would say is a good successor to Kevin Conroy for a Batman voice. It's different, but it also still feels Batman. But in my heart and through everything else, it's Kevin Conroy is the voice I hear whenever I read the comics, just like with many of you. But like that show does something like that. They have the fact that Jay Garrick was the first Flash, and then Barry Allen became the next one, and then Wally West is Kid Flash, and would eventually become the Flash, but they went off in a different direction in the series there. But I like the fact that they had fun with the legacies, and that they're building specifically because there's these legacies. There's something there to mine, because those stories and those characters and those takes on them, they are the foundation of what we have today. And yes, it has gone off the rails over the last 2 decades. I'd even argue since the 80s to a degree. But they exist and they're still revered. And so you have to figure out why that is and capture that magic and just present it in the next medium, because that's something that's I think is going to respond with the fans. And I think that's the brilliant approach, Andrew, is that, yeah, you're going to get a Flash assignment. Read everything, even the stuff that predates what they're asking of you, because there might be some sort of cool nugget in there that you could bring to the surface that the Warner Brothers may not have realized, and end up completely, knocking down a lot of walls with the character and opening up to the stuff that they can do and you're doing it based on what is existing, as opposed to just deconstructing the character and doing your own take on it, which has been happening to these characters since '89, essentially.
Yeah, I cannot argue with any of that. I am on board with that. It's an unfortunate circumstance we find ourselves in, where the modern day keepers of these characters don't treat them with the same level of respect and admiration and reverence, truly, that they did just 20 years ago.
Yeah. Sorry for the dead air, folks. I actually agreed with what you were saying, Script Doctor, but yeah, my mic was on mute. So again, I was sitting there trying to talk to you, going like, yeah, no. I got to learn there's 2 mute buttons, and I press them both sometimes, and I shouldn't do that. Sorry, folks.
Control D, that's the thing that I got here.
Now, one last thing I guess we should mention, because we could spend all night singing the praises of 90s superheroes. Because there's a difference in my eyes between like great 90s superhero stuff and then shitty 90s comic books, because they were like
there were definitely some of those.
More pockets and pouches, that's for sure.
And look, I respect Rob Liefeld as a person.
Oh.
I even respect him as an artist. I don't know what he's like all the time, but he's does some decent stuff for comics. But like he
gave us Deadpool, but apart from that, I've never.
He has a depth perception problem. I know that.
Oh, he does?
I'm pretty sure, because no one should be able to animate chests and legs and feet the way he does if you have a better balanced depth.
I just don't know if anyone's going to tell him no. Like, I get it that your book sold. You ever heard the story he tells about how he got picked up by DC on his first go-around? Like, he takes his stuff to his first convention and gets a job?
I've heard variations of that, but not any of the finer details. I always thought that felt kind of far-fetched. Especially when I've talked with the people from DC, but again, that was in the 2000s, not the 90s.
Well, look what was on the page. I mean, shit. I mean, this was the 80s for Liefeld, I believe, like the end of the whenever he was was it the character the Four Fists, Forearm, that's what it is. He had this run at DC that sucked, and then he went over to Marvel, and I was on X-Force and all that stuff. And but that's what I'm trying to say. Like, we're nostalgic for old '90s stuff, and there's a difference between being nostalgic for like Batman the Animated Series and X-Men that was high quality, and then there's like being nostalgic for some of those books of the '90s, the X-Force, the X Factor, Wildcat. Some of these books that are like, oh, people, they're great, man. They were just really hot artists on really stupid titles.
Look,
they
the
all
'90s
looked great.
gave us the '90s, and Jeff, you'll probably agree with me on this. The '90s had either really high highs or really low lows. Like, there was not a lot of gray area there. You had some absolute bangers, and then you also had some real dog water. Like, you had Claremont and Lee's X-Men, and you also had the Clone Saga.
I remember.
And dude, you could take you can go from Chris Claremont and Jim Lee X-Men, and then whoever followed up Chris Claremont, was it Fabian Nicieza or a couple of these guys, Bob Harris? Like, even that title drops quality because they didn't know what the hell they were doing. They were trying to sell a million. Look, X-Men #1 sold what, 8 million copies? They're trying to do from that point on is sell 8 million copies of another X title. I got this book over here that, it's the original scans of the original art, and like, those books are just a hodgepodge. Like, it's a test of how much can I get onto a page, how much over the top action can I have. Like, even Jim Lee, who is one of my favorite artists of all time, I'm just like, I have trouble following some of his pages because this like hyperkinetic, frenetic pace that people want, that they were putting in the '90s books, those books petered out. They don't hold their value. They're not very good in hindsight. Even some of the classics, like X-Men #1. I reread that not that long ago. It's well written, but man, it just is. It is harder to read than a book from 10 years prior by Chris Claremont. And I think that comes from the Jim Lee, and I love Jim Lee, but I think it comes from the over-taxing of your senses. Like, these '90s books, it was the stimulation to the nth degree. And I don't like books that... And oh god, there's Rob Liefeld again with his extreme comics, and I can't stand books that try to copy that shit. It sucked. The industry died then, and we like moved into this window where comics got better than that. They weren't as good as in the '80s, but it's just a weird window of time to be nostalgic for, because it's like, you had those highs, you had those lows, and it's like the nastier parts want to just keep coming back. It's like, please keep all those shitty '90s style books dead. Let stuff like Batman the Animated Series stand the test of time, and let whatever X ripoff title with Farrell and all these other crappy, well, not her, but all these other crappy characters in there. I don't know. As a comic book nerd, that's the era that I just get mad about, because it almost killed the industry forever.
Well, I mean, it was a weird oversaturation of issues too, right?
Yeah. Well, there was this phenomenon that happened where all of a sudden comics were selling an insane number of copies, and the creative teams were making an unheard of, up to this point. Oh gosh, not Liefeld's Captain. I can't look at the screen. They were making unheard of dollars, right, on their paychecks, every single book. And unfortunately, there was this oversaturation that happened, to where a lot of people started buying the comics because they thought that all of a sudden these books were going to be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars a handful of years down the line. And the fact of the matter was that while this may be a milestone book, if there's 6 million copies printed, no, it's not going to be worth that much, because everybody in the Brothers Goldfish can get one for $2.50 off of the newsstand.
And they slab them right away so that they're not going to lose their value over time or be destroyed. And when you have that many held in pristine condition, the value declines on the
exactly
market. Yeah.
So unfortunately, that contributed to the comic bubble bursting towards the end of the '90s. and it did harm the industry. However, there were things that were positives from that 90s era that carried forward into the early aughts, the early 2000s, which were that increase in emphasis on high quality art, high quality detailed coloring, things like that. And now we're back to crap art in a lot of books, unfortunately.
You know, I agree. We're back to crap art in a lot of books. But I do think some of the hallmarks of what we considered great art in comic books in the 90s doesn't hold up. A lot of the roided out dudes with the pointy triangular feet, and that goes beyond Rob Liefeld.
Yeah, it does.
Ringo
I miss
right
him.
there. That's my
He was-
man. My
We'll take a moment.
that Flash Zero book that I was talking about, that was my first ever comic book I held. That was illustrated by Mike Wieringo.
He's one of my favorites to study his style. Sadly, he passed away in, what, 06?
Yeah, it was
So-
early 2000s.
That was always a sad one, too, because like in all of his photos, he always looked so happy and proud to draw comics. And you hear all that stuff, too, how he was, very nice to fans and stuff. And you're like, oh, damn, the good ones always go. Like Michael
Seems
Turner,
that
he
way.
passed away at a young age, too, and that was sad.
That's my all-time favorite artist right there.
I was talking with one of his friends years ago at a con. Like they had like a table. What was his company that he had afterwards?
Aspen.
Okay.
Aspen
They had
Comics is the one he founded.
They had a table and it had like the stuff he had worked on, unfinished projects, and just like a back catalog of stuff you could buy. And I went up to the guy, I was like, man, he was awesome. And then he started telling me what a good friend he was and all this stuff. So that was another. Any comic book artist that passes away, and writer, yes, I care about the writers too. They always catch me off guard. I'm just like, man, not another one.
A cool little story about Michael Turner, because when he found out, because he'd been fighting cancer, one of the ugly ones too, for a while, and it wound up coming back with a vengeance. But when he was given X amount of time left, that timer was ticking down, he didn't sit back on his laurels. He cranked out so much work that there's still stuff of his that has yet to actually be printed, because he wanted to leave behind as much work as possible that could be utilized and sold so that his family would be taken care of long after he was gone.
That's insane, man. I mean, the
Yeah.
amount of time that would take.
Yeah, the man just, and he was self-taught. He was a self-taught artist.
Let me put some of his artwork up real quick, since we're going to talk about him, and we're not going to at least show some love for his art, because he created a style of woman that people have tried to ape forever.
And nobody's been successful with it, in my opinion.
Here, let's do one better. Instead of showing some pictures of his art, let's actually show the dude. Because when I was a kid, I used to love when you'd read a comic book and you get to see a picture of what the people look like.
Yeah.
I guess lots of other people did too, because that's why the Marvel bullpen existed in the '60s. But here's Michael Turner, folks. If you're watching on screen, he was a great artist, passed away many years ago. But like Andrew said, his art still comes out, and it feels timeless too. Go pick up some of his work. He even worked at Marvel, so if you're wondering, like, oh, where can I find his stuff? I've never heard of him. Everywhere.
He cranked out covers for Marvel, DC. He did a lot of the covers for Civil War, actually.
Yeah.
He did my two favorite covers for Civil War, one of which was the X-Men one that had my girl Emma Frost right at front and center. And then the other one was a pretty iconic Iron Spider cover, where it's Peter in the Iron Spider suit, all webbed up and hanging over Captain America's shield.
That one right here? There we go. Look, even me, who doesn't enjoy this costume as much, I love the composition. I think this is a great cover as well.
It's a beautiful piece.
So, I guess we're going to transition away from Batman the Animated Series finally. One last question I wanted to ask. Where do you guys rank Mask of the Phantasm in terms of Batman films?
It's the best one.
I'm hard pressed to consider any Batman film as good as that one, honestly. Like the I can, as the day is long, call Batman Begins the best live action Batman film, but it still pales in comparison to a true representation, a true adaptation of the character compared to Mask of the Phantasm. It's just not even close. And people remember Mask of the Phantasm pretty darn well. Like, you ask any Batman fan worth their salt, and they say, yeah, Mask of the Phantasm is aces. Y'all need to not be sleeping on Sub-Zero, all right?
Oh, Sub-Zero's great. Oh, way better than its companion film, Batman and Robin, which, the politics on how that got made.
I also just happen to love Mr. Freeze as a villain. He's one of my 2 favorite Batman villains next to Riddler. And so that film specifically has a special place for me.
He's also the most authentic of the tragic villain archetypes that Paul Dini reinvented.
Well, he's one that you believe.
Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that he was used so sparingly in the animated series. Oh, sorry, Jeff. Sorry.
I was going to say, Script, you can't lay us up with how the politics of the movie got it, or how the movie's politics got it made. You got to give us a little bit about this behind-the-scenes stuff with Batman and Robin.
Yeah, spill the tea.
Okay, so you'll have to bear with me because I'm forgetting the original 2 writers that wrote Batman Forever, the first draft. But it's pretty much the same as what you see. However, Akiva Goldsman was hired to just go do a dialogue polish on it. And he ended up doing a dialogue polish. He changed Edward Nygma's. Edward Nygma wasn't Edward Nygma in the movie. He changed the name back to that after having watched Batman the Animated Series. And he tooled around with the script a little bit, but made negligible changes. However, when Batman Forever hit theaters and got such good acclaim, considering the fact that it was totally different than the previous Batman films, but it was still doing well financially in box office, Akiva managed to convince those at Warner Brothers that he should be the one to write the follow-up to it and not the 2 previous writers that initially wrote it to begin with. So that's how we got Batman and Robin. And all he did was basically take all the elements of Batman the Animated Series for Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy type characters and tool them around a little bit to reinvent them for this movie. And he completely lost the heart of what they were. And the politics is that, like, how do you go from Batman Forever, which is it deals with the concept of being a slave to technology because it's new far more effectively than you'd ever give it credit for at the time when it came out. I mean, I think the brilliance of the fact that you have Edward Nygma essentially data harvesting Gotham City and eventually wanting to do that to the world, which is something very real today. But this is 20 years before that was actually an idea that would be considered commonplace. So you have to consider, like, the original writers had some good forethought on that, and you watch Batman Forever now with today's understanding of technology and selling personal information and how much power your own private personal information actually has. You have a whole new take on it, and you completely understand why Bruce Wayne rejects that type of technology in the first place. Then you get to Batman and Robin, and there's nothing really to it. It's basically just an end of the world type level film. Like the stakes aren't really as intimate compared to the previous movies where it's all really Gotham centric. But here it's Victor Freeze. He's going to destroy the world because Poison Ivy wants to destroy the world for killing his wife. It's all superficial aspects of it, and you're just wondering, like, how the heck can anyone possibly, like, that one of the things, the reason why you didn't get a 5th Batman film after that is Warner Brothers could not wrap their head around the fact that between Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, the quality of the screenplay was terrible. Like, they just couldn't. Now, granted, my personal feelings is that if you were to ask me, like, Script Doctor, which would you rather watch, The Batman by Michael Reeves or Batman and Robin, I will pick Batman and Robin.
Oh.
Because The Batman is a pretentious, loaded, zero stakes story of what's going on with the character, where at least this one, listen, I hate the fact that it's the end of the world, domination stakes, and they're using satellites to freeze the world and then reheat it up again. But at least there's stakes that are there. They matter. Like, the stakes matter. And there's a motivation to behind the characters as to why they're doing it as silly as it is. With the Riddler, it's a hollow motivation. It's like, oh, we found out that this fund is being used to launder money, and that's why I'm killing people, and I want to get caught just to. And it's all about the personal reputation of the character as opposed to trying to do what Batman villains usually do, which is, get something out of it for themselves that's beyond reputation. There's another affectation that's at play here. With Mr. Freeze, he's going to restart. He's going to freeze the world unless they bow to his demands. For Poison Ivy, she wants to save the planet because humans are evil and plants are better. They're crazy and silly, but they're motivations that are consistent throughout the entirety of the film, and it doesn't try to be dishonest in any other part of that. And at least tries to play with family. It brings about the question, what happens if Batman loses the only father figure he has? And they completely falter on that, of course, but at least they throw it in there. And what do they do with the Batman? It's like, well, we're going to make it noir, but don't understand what noir is. We're going to make Batman walk like Darth Vader into a subway station and just beat the guys up because that's not what it's just boring. It looks cool, but it's actually not fitting with the character. Like, you could argue to the point where Batman crashing through the skylight at the Gotham National Museum and, just sliding down the Brontosaurus and then jumping at Freeze. You could see Batman kind of doing that. The way they did it was silly as hell, but it felt more Batman than Batman just knocking on the door to Iceberg Lounge. Hey, let me in. It's not, it doesn't have the theatrics that are there. But to get back earlier, sorry, to give you a bit more insight, is that, yes, when Batman Forever did great theatrically, Akiva Goldsman was just hit the ground running, going to Warner Brothers office saying, see, I'm the reason this movie is great. You had to call me in for a dialogue polish. My dialogue polish saved the script and made the movie. I've got this idea where we're going to do Mr. Freeze. For the next one, I've got the idea. I'm going to write it. We're going to do it. And we're going to get it out in 2 years, which was closer than what they did, because it usually was about 3 years apart. It was Batman is 89, Returns was, I think, late 91, early 92, memory serves. And then Forever was 95, I think.
That sounds about right.
And then Batman and Robin was 1997. And you're like, what? It's such a short term, like, you're used to like 3 years between sequels was kind of the norm in Hollywood, because it's like, okay, let's rate how that first movie is doing. We figure out exactly what's going on with the market share, and then we adjust for the sequel. And the other part too, which was also kind of funny, if you have the main poster for Batman Forever with Val Kilmer at the top, and you've got the cape that's going across, that's Val Kilmer doing the same silhouette as the end of Batman the Animated Series during the end credits, with Batman in the moon and the arm up, but he's in shadow. It's the same pose that they're trying to recreate for that.
That's what that's supposed to be. I've only looked at that movie box my entire life, and I was like,
never
I guess
connected.
No, it looks like Batman's punching.
It looks like Batman's punching, but it's supposed to be him holding his cape up, just like in the animated series, that with the red moon behind him and all that stuff.
Okay, I've never seen the one sheet of just him. I've only seen the group shot, and now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, I see it, but
you see what they're trying to do, but they didn't. Well, the reason they don't understand what they're trying to do is they think that they think that in the animated series the silhouette is literal, where he's got like the bent elbow and he's holding up the cape, but no, they don't quite get it right there. But that's what they're trying to do. Yeah,
it feels silly. It's like, how did I not know? But let me pull up the real image for those people who want to get a palette cleanser.
Reference. Yeah.
No, I didn't realize that's how stuff behind the scenes for Batman and Robin went. As a kid, I was excited that there was another Batman movie, and then I saw the movie and didn't like it even back then. But I've wondered for years how these genre people get on pictures. I know we've already discussed Damon Lindelof before the last time you were here, but there's just so many people. You brought up Akiva Goldsman. I learned that name through the Kevin Smith podcast, because years ago, folks, before Kevin Smith was bawling his eyes out in movie theaters and being generally just there. He used to produce a really great show called Batman on Batman, and he would get. He might have had Kevin Conroy on an episode.
He had Kevin Conroy, Paul Dini. He had a lot of people on.
That was a great, and I don't say this lightly, that was a great podcast because, man, if you were a Batman fan like I am, I learned so much. Like, Jim Lee was on there talking about his art process, how he trained, like, every day he would look at Frank Miller and John Byrne artwork. Or, you would have just, like, all this great behind-the-scenes stuff with these people that worked on the show. And I learned so much about Batman because of that podcast. And luckily, I think it's still out there, folks. So if you want to get yourself a little more Batman knowledge, I know people don't like Kevin Smith these days. I'm not here to sing his praises or anything, but there was a time when he had his finger on the pulse and it wasn't jammed straight up his ass. So
well, that's because he hadn't had a heart attack yet and didn't get a second chance and is now wasting that second chance by behaving against what Kevin Smith is or was.
Oh, I agree. Some YouTuber once blamed our channel for giving him the heart attack because we made a video that called him a shill.
No,
I called him a shill on Twitter just the other day. I've got like 12 or 1,300 likes
ridiculous.
on that tweet. It was pretty hysterical for me. But it's because he took a freaking selfie of himself, obviously bawling his eyes out because he saw another comic book film, and that's his cookie cutter response to literally every single one that comes out. It's like, dude, how do you expect anybody to believe you? That is statistically impossible for that to be your reaction to every single movie that you watch. I don't believe you. You come off as disingenuous. Stop it.
I think he's crying because he's just so happy to be alive to see them. Because I think personally, it's the him being hired as a regular director on Supergirl is probably what led to him getting a heart attack. That's not a healthy environment. CW show, superhero CW show, I don't think is a very healthy environment for
He was a
talent.
writer director on Supergirl.
No, not a writer, just a director. He directed a number of their episodes.
What season? It had to have been after season 1 because
season 1 was CBS. There's no way he'd ever direct a CBS network show.
I will say this as somebody who Supergirl, Kara Zor-El is my second favorite DC character behind only Wally West. That first season, while not perfect, actually captured the heart of the character quite well in a lot of places. And then it just went from being a fine, fun show, proper campiness, to just absolute ass as soon as it hit the CW. Because then everything that was interesting about it went out the window, and the things that I was already critical of became insufferable.
Yeah, that seems about right for a CW take on the show. But I remember hearing stories. I think even some of them were straight out of Kevin Smith's mouth during if not his podcasts, but some of his tours where he would. He basically, said the honest thing that we in Hollywood know quite real. Obviously, is that television directors are really, they're there to say 4 things: action, cut, do a little faster, do a little slower. That's all they need. The rest of the crew, they know the workings of the show so well. You don't really need a director there. Things can be done, especially if you're several years into a show. There's a rhythm that's there. The directors really just kind of spice it up a little bit more and maybe get the best out of the actors to do things that the episode requires. But really, they're not 100% needed in television as you would expect them to be, and that was a shock to myself to learn. But then you have guys like David Nutter, who's a director. He did The Red Wedding. He did the pilot to Smallville. He does a lot of pilots because a director on TV, if you do a pilot and therefore set the tone of the show, you get paid anywhere between $10,000 to $15,000 for every episode that comes after that, whether you work on the show again or not. So you get a free check every week.
Nice.
For one day's work, which is why a lot of directors love trying to do pilots, because if it does become a hit show, they have a steady source of income for as long as that show runs. So that's a pretty sweet deal to get. But for Kevin Smith, he was talking about how he would literally give the direction of, like, whoever acts the best in this scene will get a sticker that I bought from the dollar store. And, like, that's not a direction, but that's the stuff he would use. And it would be Melissa Benoist and the chick from Not Another Teen movie that recently kicked her cocaine addiction would be acting off of each other. She played her sister. I can't remember her real name, but I know her dirty secrets. They would then do the scene, and then he would hand out the sticker, and then during the break, he would like drive to a fast food joint and say, "I'm going to buy hamburgers for everybody," and then he would talk the story of like, yeah, he goes through the drive-through, he orders 40 hamburgers, and then pulls up and is embarrassed because he's this fat guy ordering 40 hamburgers, and he's trying to say, "It's not for me, it's for the cast and crew of the Supergirl show," and shit. And they're like, "Yeah, sure thing, fat boy." And like he tells those types of stories. He basically just highlighted the fact that it was for the CW, the shows were running on automation essentially. Like the showrunners did their thing, they knew what the formula was, they did well with it, they had their staff writers that come in and do the supervisions on actual sets, but the production was pretty much automated, self-run. Didn't need anyone, they could do it with their eyes closed type of thing. And that's where your show's in trouble. If they can start doing it with their eyes closed, you're clearly not pushing them to get the best results out of your show. And Smith was just one of the directors that kind of, he was there having fun, so grateful to be there, which is fair for anyone who's working on a television show. And I think it was just a bad environment for him that allowed him to be a little too comfortable, too reckless. And I think as a result, when he left that type of thing, he couldn't probably handle the stress. And he was very fortunate that he was a pot smoker, because if he wasn't, he probably would have not been here again after that. And it would have been great for his wife and kid, because I don't like the idea of family being left behind, especially when he wasn't even 50 at that point, right? I think when he had his heart attack, he was still in his 40s.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty young. So despite his changes in personality, I'm happy he's still alive, and I hope he has a long and fruitful life, and I hope he regains a little bit of who he was beforehand to be a more valid voice of geekdom that he was before. That'd be nice. I'd like him to get a second win of that.
I would too.
Do him a lot of good.
I'd like to see.
I wouldn't restore a lot of what he's already done, but it would at least be better than what he's going to get.
Sure. Well, he's become the opposite of what some people choose to become. Whereas, some people are, everything that comes out is horrible. Everything that comes out is bad. There's nothing praiseworthy, not even a moment. But he's the opposite end of the spectrum, where everything that comes out is the best thing ever. Everything that comes out is wonderful. There's nothing wrong with this. I'm gonna bawl my eyes out, at just the emotional heartstrings that this thing's tugging on. I don't believe. How can anybody believe you? That's so disingenuous. That doesn't come across as a legitimate human reaction. And actual geeks, and I feel like I can speak on this because I consider myself one. We can praise that which we see deserving of being praiseworthy, even if it's coming from a source that we don't necessarily always like. We can also criticize that which is deserving of being criticized when it comes from a source that we generally do like. You got to be able to do both. That's how people will take you seriously. It's like, I love this thing, but I can recognize that it fails in these areas. I typically hate this thing, or I typically hate this studio, but I'm going to give them credit and accolades because they did succeed with this thing. Got to be able to do both. That's intellectual honesty, people.
Demonstrate a level of taste that, and try and be as consistent with it as possible, because our tastes do change and grow over time, of course. But just having your own taste. Like, one of the things that I've been trying to do is trying to find good stuff that's made now, just to share it out. That's good. Like, I'm like, Confess Fletch, I thought was good.
I gotta see that.
And I was like, I'm really surprised. So I'd be saying, like, go watch Confess Fletch. I think it's good. I think for someone who likes the Fletch books, not Flesh, sorry, the Fletch books, and it likes John Hamm, you'll actually be quite pleased with it.
How does he do compared to Chevy Chase? because that's like one of my favorite movies of all time. First
I
Fletch.
think John Hamm, I think, understands the character better than Chevy Chase because he doesn't try to make it like Chevy Chase is playing Fletch. He's trying to make it like this is Fletch. Um, Chevy Chase has his own charm about it, which I think is what makes those first two films what they were. Because it's kind of like a newspaper's take on Beverly Hills Cop. I felt like the way they do the Fletch theme, the pacing of the mystery and the unfolding of it. I really liked those movies. I'm not the biggest Chevy Chase fan, but I think that's one of the few times where the Chevy Chase-ness is a bit more subtle compared to his other films.
Yeah.
And for Confess Fletch, it doesn't quite fit with those other two movies, but it feels like a Fletch film. Like that, it feels very much like a Fletch film. It has all the tropes of your old pulp mysteries that the Fletch books have. And it's also got some jokes, and it also makes fun of a couple of woke jokes too. So, I mean, you gotta have fun with that.
I won't ask you 1,000,001 questions, but does it use the Fletch theme song at all?
I don't think they were able to get the rights for it.
No,
Unfortunately, no.
To me, that's a positive because when I look at something that's adapted, like we'll use Fletch or Batman or Spider-Man, it's an adapted property. And how many different people have played Batman? How many different people have played Spider-Man? Because Fletch is based on a book, yes, Chevy Chase will always be my Fletch, and I care about that first movie so much. But I'm also kind of open to more interpretation because it's an established thing. And so I'm going to take your word. I was always going to check out Confess Fletch eventually, but now I looked it up. It's on Paramount Plus. I'm going to watch it over Thanksgiving break. I'm kind of excited for it now.
It's a good mystery, too. And yeah, there's also, I think, a crossover because there's another book series by the same writer of a detective, and I think they bring that character in, and Roy Wood Jr.'s in it. And whatever personal feelings you have about him, I think he's actually a lot funnier than people give him credit for. His personal politics aside, I think he's actually good talent. But yeah, he's in this. He's actually quite good, and I enjoyed it. I was not expecting much out of it. I put it on just in the background just to have something to listen to while I'm like breaking down the story. And it ended up capturing my attention. And I was like, wow, this is better than I ever expected to be. Too bad it didn't hit theaters because it probably would have made a little dent. But it went straight to streaming. So I say check it out if you're a Fletch fan of the books. And even if you like just the movies, I think you'll enjoy it.
Like I said, you sold me on that review alone. So I'm going to be, folks, check out a YouTube short in the future where I talk about Fletch. I could all day. And Script, it's funny that you made the comparison between Fletch and Beverly Hills Cop. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have. I do. But I like that those movies came out 6 months apart. So there's like in no way could they have copied anything, especially back then. But it's just,
It wasn't a copy, but the productions were happening around the same time. And Eddie Murphy was already getting a huge rising star at that point because he really made an impact with his debut on Saturday Night Live and being the cast there. And it's funny because when you watch those two movies, they feel like they're shot a little bit similarly. They're definitely lit almost the same, given the fact that one is out on the West Coast, the other one, they're both in California. But there's just something familiar about them that you're like, maybe these two could probably be in the same universe to a degree. But yeah, they did come out pretty, close together overall. But it was just interesting that they felt that way where you're like, yeah, it's like a weird Saturday Night Live alumni mystery genre set of flicks, right?
Yeah, and they're two of my all-time favorites. I have a dilemma because I've been quoted as saying Back to the Future is my favorite movie, but really it's Beverly Hills Cop underneath it all because it's the movie I go back to and watch constantly, want to celebrate, want to learn more about. Oh, dude.
I love that opening where he's just being this big, like boisterous type of guy screaming at him like, this is the deal, this is how much money I said. And then the car chase where he's just swinging on the back of the truck with all the cigarette. Oh, it's so outrageous that, yeah, it really hooks you into the rest of the movie. And then you have his best friend comes in asking for help, and just, when he's killed, you feel the motivation, you feel what's Eddie Murphy's going through as Axel in this. And I dug it. I like the fact that he's that dedicated of a cop that he's going to use his vacation time to find the man who killed his best friend and uncover that mystery, because it's what he owes him, because that man, his best friend, was the reason that he had that second chance to become a cop. And it's like, damn, there's something really cool and deep and emotional in that for an action film in the 80s.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's my number one reason for liking it so much, because I like how tenacious Axel Foley is. Like, he will not quit until he gets his man. And the same thing is in the second one, too. He talks about loyalty to Bogomil. It's like, hey, actually, I never thought about this from part 1 to 2, but now I kind of like it. It's a parallel, because, like, he goes out on a limb because of what Mikey did for him, and he does it again for Bogomil. You're right. I'm going to talk about this on Thursday night show, because the guys and I will go into this long form about Beverly Hills Cop. Believe me, I go nuts for the music. I got a listener, D. Pensack, brought me a Beverly Hills Cop 2 film reel trailer. So, like, I collect that movie like you wouldn't believe. On my fucking coat rack in the living room sits a Detroit Lions jacket. I hate the Detroit Lions. I hate Detroit. I went to school in Michigan. It was a terrible state to live in, but I love Beverly Hills Cop so much. Oh, man. No, but let's take this crying bastard off the screen and let's check in with the audience. We are way behind with checking in with the audience.
Crying bastard.
Bro, I always look it. I don't talk about feeling entitled, but I feel entitled to shit on Kevin Smith when the time is right. I made the fucking pilgrimage from my house in Cincinnati to the Quick Stop. I went to see the filming locations of Clerks. I've been to the Secret Stash. I met those guys. They're assholes from Comic Book Men. They actually work in the store. Fuck them all. But my point is, like, I will gladly dump on him when need be. But I feel Kevin Smith, we've given you enough attention, because now I want to talk about Black Panther. I had the other opposite effect. I wasn't crying in the theater because I was so touched by an emotional, wonderfully filmed. Nah, man. I was pissed because I spent nearly 3 hours of a Sunday night in a theater reviewing something, for the channel so people don't go see it themselves. And all I lost was my time and money. So be on the lookout for us to talk about that in just a moment. But you know what, Script, since you brought this up, we're going to press a button to transition into the audience portion, and we're going to use this one right here.
Me off, all right, man? Jerk somebody else off. This is bullshit. I need $5,000, not $2,000 thing, man. Don't do this to me.
Look, don't be unreasonable. You're not dealing with Johnny Bananas. Come on. Yeah.
Nah, I know I ain't dealing with Johnny Bananas, but can I have my money? Can I say it slow for you? Look, I need $5,000. Read my lips. $5,000 is what I need.
Eddie Murphy was funny as shit.
Oh, yeah.
I just love the looming thread of the cop car just pulling up slowly. Like, it drives by, so then it goes in reverse, and then it comes right in. It's like, oh, yeah.
Oh, I watched it last night, actually. Beverly
Good
Hills
palate
Cop
cleanser for, I guess, Wakanda Forever.
Yeah, you know what actually would be an appropriate palate cleanser for Wakanda Forever would be Coming to America, folks. If you need a palate cleanser about a fake African country that's just as important as Wakanda, then watch Zamunda. Because Prince Akeem wants to come to America and find his queen and queens. So he brings Simi, and they fucking find true love. And that is a more impactful and emotional story than Black Panther, where they quibble about vibranium. They're sad that Chadwick Boseman died, and they don't have a protector, and it's a really shit movie. So I'm sorry to keep jumping around, but let's check with the audience.
If I didn't need any more reasons to not go spend 3 hours of my time and $20 of my money on Wakanda Forever, you just gave me another one.
Well, I heard that none of the Avengers went to Chadwick, T'Challa's funeral. Like, they didn't even do that, which is horrible. I mean,
no, dude, they don't really. No. You know what it is? Is because they don't want you to see other superheroes that you go, hey, wait a minute, I want to follow literally any other superhero. Can I follow fucking Groot? Wow, Groot's actually a pretty cool character. Who is the Bucky? Lamest character? I was gonna pick Bucky, but I thought people were gonna say, but I like Bucky. But I was gonna say, can we just follow fucking Bucky? Can we follow Bucky? He's kind of boring. Can we follow? I don't want to follow Bucky because he follows the Falcon Captain America, and I hated that show with a passion. Like,
that
the fucking
show made me physically angry.
Yeah, I don't.
They actually had the opportunity to do something really cool with Bucky, and anybody that was a fan of Marvel, that's been a fan of Marvel Comics for a long time, knows that Bucky temporarily taking up the shield And the suit as Captain America wasn't exactly well received by everybody, and for a reason, because people recognize Steve Rogers is Captain America, period. Just like Bruce Wayne is Batman, Peter Parker is Spider-Man, so on and so forth. However, with the story that was being written and set up in the MCU, if somebody was going to take up Steve's shield after Steve passed, it would have been Bucky. That was the thing that made the most damn sense. And they also had an opportunity to tell a really great, emotional, and deep redemption arc for the character. Because the only thing that he had to latch on to outside of his history of being an assassin as the Winter Soldier was the legacy that Steve left behind. And he understood that legacy better than anybody. He would have been the one that could have not only upheld that legacy, but also at the same time needed it. Sam didn't need it. Sam didn't need the demotion of Steve Rogers' sloppy seconds. Sam was already a really well-liked character as the Falcon. Everybody liked him. I loved him. He's freaking great. And like right as soon as he's introduced in Winter Soldier, I was like, all right, I'm on board with him. I love it. They did a great job introducing his character into the MCU.
Agreed. Dude, when the first Black Panther came out all those years ago, when Bucky was it the White Wolf? And they just show him randomly. He's like, I'm ready for the next battle or something. And he present that arm. That's the post-credit sequence, right? Or is that in Infinity War?
I think that was the post-credit sequence.
Right?
I think that was the post-credit sequence, though.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's been a while. We'll say that's what it is in headcanon.
All right, cool. Because like back then, man, I was all on board. The MCU used to have the innate ability to like make me enjoy characters that I have a relationship with already, but make me like their movie version so much that I've gone back and retroactively like the comic book version. A lot of characters are like that because the way my comic book life went and still goes is I like Spider-Man first and foremost. And so because of my interest in that character, Spider-Man appears in an Avengers title. Oh, that guy's kind of cool. Let me pick up his book later on down the road. And I kind of, that's how I made my way through the Marvel Universe back then. Knew the characters, had opinions of the characters, but like just sometimes, like Scarlet Witch, didn't really like her in the book. Why would I? She's a bad guy. She's not a bad guy. She's conflicted emotionally. She's worried about her kids. Those aren't story traits that I care about. In the comic book, I want to watch people fight over, gangland violence in New York City, or a guy who can climb up a wall and save his sick aunt. That's my cup of tea. And so the movies eventually got there, but they were able to introduce these characters in a way that I appreciated. Black Panther was one of those characters. I had, interest in the character, knowledge of the character, had owned a handful of books. Admittedly, I haven't purchased a new Black Panther book since the movies have come out, but I had enjoyed him so much in Civil War, especially Chadwick Boseman's performance. I love the line about the living are not done with you yet when he lets Baron Zemo live. Really responded well to that character. And so the fact that we're at the sequel and it's this bad, that says a lot. So before we get in with that, let's actually check in with the audience. Folks, I'd like to thank everyone who's been supporting WCBS. I know it took us a minute to get to this portion of the show, but thank you for your patience. We have a lot of messages, a lot of wonderful people, and they've been patient. So let me refresh this window.
Chat, you're awesome. Thank you for allowing us to geek out in front of you.
Yeah, thank you for allowing us to entertain you with our crazy rants.
So, our Chip Pancake just got back from Petco, folks. He's
I went to Petco because it's where the pets go.
Are you going to be the sponsored cat now? Are you going to pay our bills for Pancake?
Well, I think I should. I think I'm cuter than anyone else who works there, so they should hire me.
There you go. I think we'll hire you, Chip Pancake, for other stuff too.
Tell Petco I'm hired.
Hashtag Petco. Cesario Japan, thank you very much for your first message. He says, what kind of BS is this movie? Give me the Buffalo Jeff audio clip. Of course, Cesario Japan. I'll give you the Buffalo Jeff audio clip.
Did you tell the audience my renaming for it?
Would you rename it again?
Wakanda the Sea, featuring
Aquaman.
Aquaman played by Hussein Momoa.
You found my secret button. Lucky you. Lucky me.
Jesus, Jesse.
There you go. There you go.
So, up next, we had one from our friend SH Rebels 08 who says, the word of the day is dongle. Black Panther, dongle not forever. How Stella got her dongle back. Dongle and Dongle 2, Stiffy's Revenge. So, folks, do us a favor. Give us your dongle titles like X-Men, Dongles of Future Past, or Thor, the Dark Dongle.
That sounds like something totally different. That's for damn
Spider-Man
sure.
Far From Dongle.
Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Dongle? Or the Dongle of Madness? That
Spider-Man
pretty
dongle
too.
coming? Ugh.
Oh, that's a little spicy.
That's perfect for this channel.
I feel like I need a shower.
Thank you, though, SH Rebels 08, for bringing your dongle to tonight's show. Folks, do your worst. TLJ Screwjob, thank you. Genuinely hope whoever mentions lots of people dying in their 60s on the High Council last week doesn't feel like they jinxed Kevin Conroy. If it was Mad, well, Mad deserves to feel bad. But Andrew and I, we definitely were saddened by the loss of Kevin Conroy. And the only reason I'll speak for us is because we were both on the show last week, so, and I know how we feel. We both presented that tonight. But yeah, blame Mad. That's the running gag here. It's always his fault. TLJ Screwjob is back again with, like Ian McKellen, I don't care about a personal life. I found out that Ian and now Kevin just enjoying roles since it doesn't/shouldn't matter. Agreed, TLJ Screwjob. I have no issue with anybody. It's called acting. It's, whatever. You're going to play the role, no problem. But, I don't really care. He seemed like a great guy that people loved. He was Batman, so that's all that mattered. TLJ Screwjob again says, now is a good time as any to start watching Batman the Animated Series / Superman the Animated Series. Folks, if you don't, I won't use this platform to try to get you to sign up for a streaming service because I don't really agree with these companies' platforms. Plus, I don't get a kickback from it. If I'm going to promote a product, I want it to be Tits and Art or something that actually helps support the channel. But I will say this. If you have access to Batman the Animated Series, watch it. And if you don't have access, buy that show. That show gets a fucking 11 out of 10. Buy it now. Buy it yesterday. Get 2 copies, one for you, one for your friend, and pick up everything you can associated with the show because you're going to fall in love with it. I can't imagine being roughly our ages and not having watched the show. Now, you didn't have to like the show and love it, but how are you not even aware of it? It was everywhere. It was kind of like the most widely accepted show when we were growing up. Everybody watched Batman, even the bigger kids. Even girls.
Oh God, yeah. That's the one thing that was kind of crazy for a boy at my age. Is my friends and the girls that were friends with me just because I was shorter than them at the time, so they would sit down and watch that show and have no problem with it. It was great, and yeah, you don't see that too often for television.
No. I went to a school where it was weird. The boys and girls didn't really interact much. And when we did, it was clear that they were into that traditional girls shit and we didn't have any crossover. It was maybe if you both liked sports, but I didn't go to school with cool people that liked comics and shit. Everyone railed on me. Oh, why are you drawing Spider-Man again? I don't know, because I like it and it's fun, Yeah. It's interesting. It would be funny to run into those people oh yeah, I used to draw Spider-Man all the time. What do you do now? I draw comic books. It kind of worked out. I've always been into this shit. When I was in school, my notebooks were just filled with drawings. I didn't give a shit. I mean, yeah, I paid attention in class, but that's where it was, man. That's all I cared about. TLJ Screwjob, thank you. Hope Warner / DC bosses and investors see this. May not happen for a few years, but things like The Rock thanking fans will help bring people back. I agree.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but all the shit that he was saying about Black Adam made me want to go see the movie, and that was on my birthday I saw the thing. So, yeah, Rock, it worked. Jabroni. Lord of Opossums, thank you very much. Hi, Jeff. How are you this beautiful day? I'm doing well. It's the High Council. It's Tuesday. We're having a great time here on the channel. So, folks, hit that thumbs up button to let YouTube know that you like us. And do me one more favor, just to fight YouTube, because we're all doing this together. This is man versus machine. Wish it was man versus food, because I'd be a lot happier. But this is man versus machine, folks. And by just sharing this somewhere, that helps too. So we're fighting the machine together. Enrique Vasquez, what's up? He says, "Hail, High Council. Awesome show tonight. Script Doctor, thanks for all the cool Batman info. Random button, please." Well, let me give you a random button, because there's so many different random buttons to press here on the channel. How about... I like Enrique. Let's give him a good one, shall we?
Get what you fucking deserve!
Oh my gosh!
There you go. We'll keep it on brand. Up next, we have a few more, and then we're going to jump right back into the topic, folks, because, again, we appreciate you waiting. Here's the last one for now. SH Rebels 08 says, "I'll take a you get what you deserve and a dookie, please." Well, since I pressed the other you get what you deserve, I guess you'll just have to get the longer you get what you deserve. And, well, I don't think you'll be too upset.
How about another joke, Moran? What do you get?
I don't think so.
When you cross
I think
a
we're
mentally
done
ill
with you,
loner
George. That's
with a
it.
society that abandons him and treats him like trash, I'll tell you what you get.
Call the police.
Get what you fucking deserve. Good night.
Goodbye. That poor stormtrooper has fallen down the stairs thousands of times here over the years, and it's still funny. Oh, and we will give you this, and then this is the perfect transition, because this button is called Dookie, and the movie that I watched a couple days ago is pure Dookie.
What's that smell?
Yeah, I smell it too, Hogan. Now, guys, when I'm going to talk about Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, I'd like you guys to ask me any of the questions you might have about the movie or any of the rumors you may have heard, so we can give the audience a nice, full conversation around this film, because you hear stuff online, true and false. You hear the discussions around these films, and this one is getting heated, but for all the wrong reasons. Because, like other things in life, Black Panther is a slightly deflated balloon. You think it's going to be one thing, and it really is just something else. Now, what I mean by that is Black Panther 1 is a fine movie that got way too much hype because of the social aspect of it. We'll just put it like that.
Correct.
Now, I'm supposed to be in the category that runs to the theater, throws my hands across my chest, and does all that stupid shit. Like, I'm in the demographic.
I was supposed to buy you a ticket. I'm sorry, man. Or was I supposed to buy you half a ticket? I can't keep track.
Send me 25 cents, because that's half of what I paid to go see Wakanda Forever, and we'll call it a day. Seriously, I paid. All the people that like to get up on arms, why did you pay to see the movie? First off, folks, we're above that shit. We see these movies, so you don't have to. So if you got that question, that's the answer, and it's going to be the answer forever. But I'm happy to answer it, because I'm happy to have you here. With that being said, though, while I did lose out on 50 cents, I lost out on roughly 3 hours of my life. And my God, no, this was such an inconsequential, boring film. It tried to stand on the fact that Chadwick Boseman's passing shook the fan base. Yeah, it was a sad moment. Like Kevin Conroy's passing, we took our time and we talked about it. Why? Because you find out that Chadwick Boseman did these wonderful things beyond just... playing the character is one thing. That's fine. You're an actor. Good for you. You got paid. But he would go out and see kids and do this stuff and really live the character. And hell, when he was sick and dying, he was out seeing sick kids too. So that kind of stuff goes a long way in my perception of an actor. And it also, sometimes, if I'm feeling generous, I'll, give certain things a pass, because it's like, oh yeah, this happened, blah, blah, blah. Black Panther wants to cash in on, hey, Chadwick Boseman died and he was a good dude. Watch this movie. Folks, don't buy this shit. First off, at the very end, they'll show you some flashbacks to Chadwick Boseman playing the Black Panther. If you want those scenes, go watch the first movie, because that's all it is. They didn't try to re-CGI him or do any of that dumb crap. They just flat out showed clips of the first movie. And that's one of the problems I have with this film overall, is it almost feels like it's trying to be, how do I want to say it? it's trying to be reverent of the situation, but it's trying to create this like companion piece to the superhero film where this is like the next evolution of the superhero film. It's high action, it's this and that, but it's an emotional drama that really touches at the heart of, you know, X, Y, and Z. And that's fine if you're Daniel Clowes and you write these indie books, or you're Robert Crumb or some of these other people, but this is fucking Marvel Comics. This is the company where people have bones made of metal, people fucking swing on ropes, can get blasted by nukes, turn into green monsters, fly around in suits that they made in a cave. Like, this is the most fantastical universe, well, maybe ever, because it spans from urban fantasy to science fiction to high fantasy to classic. It's got everything in Marvel. And the fact that this is what they give us, and this is what a modern day Marvel MCU film is a disgrace. I'll just stop there before I just keep going on a tangent. Let me just get this out of the way first. Andrew, what is the one critique you and I complain about Thor in some of these modern Marvel movies quite a bit? Like, it's a very specific thing, but we constantly complain about it.
Put too much emphasis on Jane Foster.
Yes, she ruins this movie. But no, man, we always bitch about the bad special effects in these modern Marvel movies, right?
Yeah.
This one has some of the worst.
Even worse than like that third act of the first Black Panther, because that was pretty bad.
Yeah, there's a shot where the bald lady, what's her fucking name? The main warrior lady.
The general chick, right? The general?
Yeah, the general chick.
The badass. I can't for the life of me remember her name, but she's a badass.
Yeah, and I like the actress too. She's fine in The Walking Dead. But long story short, what I'm trying to get at is, like, there's a shot of her standing in, like, the way you would do it in art is you would focus on the depth. Like, if I'm drawing her, I would draw her, and then I would draw a background. I'd probably ink it in a thinner line to denote line weight and depth. When you do CGI, you have to take in lighting, all kinds of different things into effect. Black Panther did not, so they just put a blur green effect behind her head. It looks like she's standing, and the thing is, she's just like out in the open, but it looks like she's standing in front of a gem. That was a weird effect. There are other shots in the movie where they go to show Wakanda, and it's fucking unrendered and blurry. Like, we talked about Ocarina of Time at the beginning of the game, or the beginning of the show, excuse me. There's a scene in Ocarina of Time where that giant owl takes you from the top of Death Mountain and flies you down to Kakariko Village. And in 1998 graphics, it was pretty impressive. But there's this one weird shot where it shows you zoom in on the village, and you can see it's a 2D image that's stretched to look 3D. That's what Wakanda looks like in the background. And then, I guess the producers of this movie noticed how shitty it was, so then all of a sudden the scene randomly blurs out that background moving forward. It's like, I don't get how this shit got past the people that made it. It's like, the basic effects look bad. You know, when they swim, it looks fine. When Shuri fights Namor, when she fights him at the end, it looks whatever. But, like, for a couple $100 million movie, this is a $250 million movie, folks. There's no excuse. This just continues the trend of really rough Marvel movies.
It also apparently, not to get sidetracked on this, it apparently had like a 70+% drop off.
73.
Yeah.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
Really, it's really bad for a Sunday to Monday. And it looks, based on the numbers, it looks like it's kind of hit the flatline point of a film after its first weekend. So if the next 3 days, they average kind of the same, between 8 and 11 million a day, that's going to be its audience and likes for a while. And it's going to slowly diminish by about 50% every week over week, because currently, factually right now, Wakanda Forever has made almost a few $1 million shy of what Black Adam has done in its entire run. So from Disney's perspective, Marvel's still going to be able to say, yeah, we got to win. We showed you, Warner Brothers. But overall, with regards to the legs, I don't think Wakanda Forever is going to have it if you have this high of a steep drop after 3 days in theaters.
I'm glad you guys brought this up, because now I'm going to follow it a little closer. I love a good box office drop. I love a good box office flop. And I just love watching Disney scramble, because I said my piece about the fake cultural relevance, the sanctimonious BS of this movie, and then I go to see it because, I guess Disney held me at gunpoint because the way I look. Thanks, Disney. But, you know, what I met with, man, like, it starts out with a funeral. And it's not even like, how do I want to say it? Like, they're trying to make me feel sad for T'Challa's passing. And I don't. I just go, okay, he died. And then what? And so then I sit and I watch Angela Bassett mope for, 45 minutes. And then I just watch characters. I don't know how to phrase it without it sounding silly, but like, I watch the characters do things, but I don't feel like they matter. It's like, oh, Everett Ross is here. He keeps saying, I would give my life for them. They saved my life. It's like, all right, man. I don't believe you anymore. Like, I don't even think the people that made this movie felt like they were on board 100%. Because it feels like a product. It doesn't feel like a movie. And I would strongly suggest everybody avoid this movie like the plague. The new characters are terrible. The old characters, like M'Baku, that guy's still funny. If you liked him in the first movie, you're going to like him in the second one. He's still good. But like, Riri Williams is a stupid character. She doesn't make sense. She doesn't fit in. She is there to either check a box, to sell you almost Iron Man, or to somehow try to make a commentary on what it's like to be black in America versus what it's like to be fictionally black, but then they don't really address that. And so the movie falls in on itself because it wants to be a big deal. It wants to be this cultural touchstone. And in reality, Marvel made you one of the weakest films of the MCU's entire run. Jesse, would you say this is the Black Panther Wakanda Forever is the worst film of Phase 4, or there are worse films?
I think Eternals might be worse still. But it's pretty bad. It was just boring. I mean, it was hard to watch. And I just can't get behind a character whose name is Retarded Williams. Like,
yeah, Riri.
That's her name. Like, it's the only thing I've ever had context for.
I'm not going to be able to look at that any other way now, Jesse.
I've never used in any other context except as a more PC way to call someone retarded.
Yep, and you know where I learned that from? Kevin Smith.
In
the Clerks cartoon, he calls Randall calls people a Riri, and I was like, oh, okay, I get what that's supposed to mean.
That's amazing.
And so we got fucking
somehow made it better.
Brian Michael Bendis is up here naming Riri Williams Riri. It's kind of stupid, you know?
Is it like a troll drop type of thing?
I don't think so. I think it was meant to be. I don't know. I don't even know what the fuck. Look, this is why half of these ethnic. How do I want to phrase it without coming off like an asshole? I don't care what color the writer is. If they want to write a color or a person or a character that's a different color, that's fine. You shouldn't be limited. You shouldn't go, well, I don't have the life experience. No, man, just write an interesting character. John Stewart Green Lantern was invented by a white guy, and that's my favorite my favorite version of the character. I didn't care that it wasn't created by Dwayne McDuffie in the 90s. I don't care that a black artist didn't work on it. I don't give a fuck. I don't care about these things. Good, that should, go above that. But then when you get the ones that, like a Brian Michael Bendis, that want to write Riri Williams and try to say something a little more than the humanity element of it, you create a character whose name is retarded and her actions are stupid and inconsequential. Like, guys, the plot of this movie is this MIT student somehow builds a machine that can detect vibranium. And so the CIA gets a hold of it, and they go to mine Wakanda. They go to mine vibranium under the sea, because this movie teaches us that vibranium is found in Wakanda and wherever the fuck Namor, wherever he lives, like Atlantis, not Atlantis, whatever.
Jog my memory. In the first movie, and also in Civil War, wasn't it stated? Or not in Civil War, but in Age of Ultron, wasn't it stated that vibranium was really only found in mass quantities in Wakanda? Or am I misremembering?
No, I don't think you're misremembering it, because in the movie, they were going to write around it, but they're like, yeah, what about the meteor? What about this? What about that? This undoes our entire...
Like, there could have been another meteor, and since most of the Earth is covered in water, it stands to reason it would have landed in the ocean. Oh, we just never knew.
Yeah, that's it. It's one of those situations like, we're not surprised.
And they're all along.
It undoes the importance of Wakanda having vibranium. So this whole movie is essentially I'm going to call Namor, and I'm going to call it Atlantis, but Namor and the Atlanteans want to protect their culture and their vibranium. The Atlanteans, yeah, they're from Atlanta now. And then you have the Wakandans, and it's like they're going to go to battle over vibranium, but they don't want. Namor doesn't want the outside world to know he exists, and so he kidnaps Shuri and threatens to kill her if the Queen tells the world that he exists. It's as stupid as it is trying to have me talk about it as it is watch the fucking thing.
They're essentially going to battle over whether or not they should kill Riri Williams, which the
Oh yeah, they want to kill Riri. The Wakandans want to kill her, and then
I mean, I'm
they
on
want to
board
capture.
with this.
she knows.
And then the Atlanteans want to like kill her. And so it's like they're fighting over this random black girl out of Boston that nobody fucking knows. She just ran like that's my issue with the character.
So they're artificially trying to make her important when nobody actually gives a shit.
Exactly. And dude, she gets lost in this fucking movie. Look, no disrespect to actually I don't give a shit if the actress hears it. She's never gonna listen to this show. Lady, I don't want to watch you as Riri Williams. I don't want to watch Riri Williams in general. Like Marvel has this wonderful new ability to create these awesome characters that everybody hates because they suck. And like, folks at home, you may have a finite amount of resources this holiday season. Do not spend the $9 that you could see in Wakanda Forever. Like, burn it. It's better to burn your cash than to go spend it to see Black Panther. It's a dumb movie.
So they don't even successfully kill Riri. Then I assume I assume because this is a bad Marvel film, and they kidnap. You said they kidnapped the princess. They kidnapped Shuri.
Yes.
So do they kill Riri or try to kill Riri then, or they just take Riri too?
They take Riri and Shuri, and then Namor goes back to Wakanda to tell the Queen that they have her, and that if they, if you
why does the Queen give a shit about Riri?
Oh, I mean the daughter, the Shuri.
Oh,
they
Shuri.
have Shuri.
Sorry, I missed her.
They're both kidnapped together. What happens is Shuri is
I can
out.
At least pretend to give a shit about Shuri.
Yeah, she's the focal point of this movie. So if you like her, be prepared to not like her by the end of the film.
That's what I was going to say. I actually really liked Shuri in Black Panther. I did. Doesn't develop.
She's flat. She doesn't really do much. She doesn't go anywhere.
She's still too much of the bratty teenager she was in the first one. She should have developed beyond that point for this movie.
Yeah.
She doesn't. She's just sort of frozen in her teenage rebellion, and that's what we're watching.
And so you sit there and you watch her be an angsty teenager who's a little sad over her brother, and she wants to go off on this mission with the one lady, the one that we like, the general. And so Namor finds where they are, and he rolls up on a whale, and they capture Shuri, and they capture Riri. They take them under the sea down to Atlanta, and then they fucking hang out there. And Namor is he gives Shuri his mother's bracelet, which is this turquoise jewelry, but it was grown in soil rich in vibranium. So it's this magical bracelet, essentially. He just gives it to her. And like, this movie, if it would have made the line, or if it would have had the line about bringing the two kingdoms together through marriage, I would have been more in line with like what that scene was. But in reality, it's just him kind of flirting with her, talking to her, and then handing her the one piece of what is it, the Deus Ex Machina you call it, or whatever, the MacGuffin, the thing that they need to create the heart-shaped herb to then bring back the Black Panther. It's all one big circular story to just get you back to the beginning.
Namor is the architect of his own demise.
Yeah, Namor is the architect of his own demise, dude. He absolutely, like, he doesn't do any of it well.
Well, Namor's, at least in my experience, he's never been a particularly likable character in the comic books, but he's always been a specific way, and people who have liked him just as he was. I don't see why his altering was necessary, where they had to make him freaking Aztec or whatever the hell it was.
I'm still trying to figure out how feathers survive the constant wetness of water, especially at like such low depths, because that headdress that he wears in those promotional images looks like it would probably like wilt away if it was underwater all the time. And why would they still hold on to the feathers when they want to go more fish-like? Wouldn't it be fins? You know, if they're underwater. I don't get the concept with retaining the land aspects of their culture if they now are a sea-dwelling one.
Well, they don't. So what happens is you hear the story. Hey Jesse, they take the herb, right? The blue people.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. That was how they.
Yeah. So they all take this herb and they drink it and die, and then they come back to life and turn blue, and they instantly go and they run to the water. And so they leave this war-torn land, and now they're going to be new people under the sea. So the Atlanteans come up with like these little water masks that they wear, and they're blue on the surface, but they're flesh-colored underwater. So like Atuma and Namora look like normal Hispanic people, and only Namor looks human or retains his color on land and sea. So that's how that works.
That's very convoluted.
It is, dude. It's all convoluted. And the problem is it's convoluted and none of it's entertaining. Like sometimes you have a convoluted plot, something that's over the top, and you go, "Yeah, man, that's really good." But then this movie, like Jesse and I,
do you notice how boring it was to get all the information from this movie by two people trying to explain it? That's how boring it is trying to get it from the movie, because most of the movie is just two people explaining all this shit to you.
Yeah, there's no
talking scene after talking scene.
I would call this movie exposition forever, because that's what it is. It's just dialogue to further, and the thing is, it doesn't even further the grand plot of the MCU. It just,
So it kind of exists in a vacuum.
It exists in a vacuum. It doesn't even really reference. I think they mentioned Thanos one time, like just maybe once, if they mention it. Do they even mention Thanos in this movie? No, they don't mention anything. They don't say. Oh, and the only time they mention like a real good hero is like Iron Man, because Riri gets her suit and the FBI goes, "Oh shit, she's got an Iron Man suit," and then she shoots him and flies away. Like it's got that level of humor. It's got that level of.
Sorry, there was humor.
I'm using the term lightly.
I was wanting to laugh. I was like, "Where's all the MCU jokes? At least we have something to entertain me." What?
Yeah, folks, like, for everyone that complains about there being too many jokes in the MCU, this is the movie for you, because they just replace it with bullshit.
So it sounds like in the pantheon of the MCU, this is like a one-night stand equivalent of a movie. So if that's the case, then it should be called Wakanda Forget Her instead of Wakanda Forever.
Bro, I agree. That's a great title. I'll stick with Wakanda Forever because it feels like this movie goes on forever. Like it's. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna give you a reaction of my face in the movie. If this movie. Oh my god! If this movie was if I was a pro wrestler and this movie was another pro wrestler, I'd probably kill the wrestler by accident. This movie sucked on a level, like, it was bad on a level that is
this
hard.
This movie was a no-sell, basically.
Thank you.
I got
this movie,
you.
The thing is, it sucks. So it's like, on screen, with the exception of the bad CGI that I mentioned, like the composition looks fine. The underwater shots look good. The fights look good. The battles, the stuff, everything from the trailer that's in the movie looks good. But everything that's not in the trailer is the reason why you wouldn't go see this movie. So, like, every character's story is lacking. There's no real stakes added outside of, like, the government wants to get Riri Williams, and the Atlanteans want her, and this person wants her, and it's like, all right, fine. And in the meantime, you got Julia Louis-Dreyfus and fucking Martin Freeman having their tit for tat back and forth, trying to build up whatever version of what is she, Sword or something in the MCU? Like,
yeah,
it's trying to do like 10 different things at once. None of it works. It makes me fucking. Spider-Man was the best Marvel movie we've had in 3 years, and that'll still be the best one. This was just fucking terrible.
So this was a comic book movie without the thing that makes comic book movies important, which is being fun.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't hate yourself after watching Angela Bassett cry herself to death, then you're probably going to hate yourself for the 3 hours you'll lose. And like, I'm just trying to think, like, first example, folks, there's no post-credit sequence, and there's a mid-credit sequence, and it's stupid.
Yeah, I heard about the mid-credit sequence. The one that Kevin Smith posted his crying selfie on Twitter saying the mid-credits sequence is worth the price of admission alone.
If
I heard
you
about that.
listen
I was
to,
like, that doesn't sound like worth spending $20 on, bro. I'm sorry.
no, folks, I'm going to spoil it for you right now. Long story short, here's the big spoiler that Kevin Smith cries over. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to tell you something so severe. Please make sure that you're sitting down. If you're driving a vehicle, pull to the side of the road. We'll wait. If you're flying an airplane, how do you get service up there? But most importantly, just relax, because I'm about to tell you a groundbreaking moment in cinematic history that'll change your life. Are you ready? Black Panther had a kid with what's-her-face. That's it. That's the fuck. And it's not. So you have
What is with Ryan Coogler and having characters out of wedlock, having children out of wedlock?
Dude, I was gonna make the point. Why is it the obsession that the black guy's got to be the absentee dad? Like, seriously,
yeah.
Like, Tony Stark can give up the world to raise his kid, but T'Challa, like, we'll write him a kid after he's dead, and we'll play into those stereotypes. And that's what really pisses me off too about these Marvel movies. It's like, we're gonna create something, a cultural experience for the black community, but then you play into every fucking stereotype. It's like, all right,
maybe that's the cultural experience for the black community to these people.
So wait, is the child born after T'Challa has died, or like how young is this kid?
This kid's like 6 or 7. What?
So T'Challa just doesn't know he exists or abandoned? Like that's what Coogler did to Creed in Creed. Like, he made Apollo Creed a bad dad.
Well,
he cheated on his wife.
He doesn't abandon this kid. The kid is named T'Challa II, and like a part of to make it seem like T'Challa and what's-her-face ran off to Haiti and raised this kid secretly. But like T'Challa wasn't around because he was snapped out of existence and all this other crap. So yeah, this kid would have pretty much been raised very little T'Challa because of the snap. And what's with the obsession with making all the MCU characters either have kids or like pick up kids? Like Thor randomly picks up a daughter at the end of the movie. Yeah. Do you want to watch Avengers with kids? I don't.
No, I don't care about their kids. Sorry.
I don't care about them anymore. Sorry.
The only times I really care about superheroes having kids, and I don't even need one whole hand, honestly. I think when DC Rebirth kicked off, Jonathan Kent added a really great dynamic to the Superman family. I think that Wally West makes sense as being a family man while still balancing the thing that he loves doing, which is being a superhero. And he's got his twins, Jai and Irie. I think that there's an interesting dynamic between Bruce and Damian. And then in my headcanon actual future of Spider-Man, him and MJ having a daughter works.
Yeah, that's the
and
one.
That's it. That's
Mayday
one.
Parker. That's the one.
Well, either Mayday or Annie Mae in the Renew Your Vows. Either one.
I gotta finish that series. I picked up the first book because I was like, "Hey, classic Spider-Man's back," and I just forgot.
Read it. It's actually quite good. I would say that is one of the better, more recent Spider-Man books, even though it's still several years old, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, I was living back in Ohio when that series came out. Folks, if you're a toy collector like I am, they did a Renew Your Vows action figure 2-pack from Hasbro. I'm going to continue my... I got it too. I would continue my trend of telling people, though, if you're looking for the premier Spider-Man figure, you can do better than the one in this 2-pack. There's an Amazing Fantasy one that's slightly better, but that's just review of toys for the week. Join us next time for more. This movie, actually this phase of Marvel being a nothing burger for so long is a problem. It's not about just fans not being satisfied, but it continues to then spawn things that aren't interesting. For example, it was announced a couple days ago that Riri Williams' Ironheart show will be a direct sequel to Wakanda Forever. So here you go. Here's another spoiler, folks. Riri leaves her suit in Wakanda and goes back to America. So the Ironheart show is either going to be her building another suit, or it's going to be her dealing with her dad and bringing back the car and all this other dumb shit. Again, I will tell you to skip that one too. Have I watched it? Fuck no. But don't do that to yourself. You deserve better, because I deserve
a lot
better.
more of I don't care.
It's not sad that's where the MCU is, but it's just kind of disappointing, because I'll take it this route too. If you want to create minority characters or ethnic characters or that's awesome, but make them good and make them approachable or appealing to everyone. Because what you do by trying to make a minority character for that minority, it's like weird segregation. It's like only black people can have a black character. Only Hispanic people can have a Hispanic character. Only Muslim girls can like Miss Marvel. Like, that's a modern Marvel doing that I absolutely hate. Because everybody should be able to pick up one of these books and get into it. Now, if
I guess I was doing it wrong in the 90s when I was growing up and loving Jon Stewart and Storm. And Bishop.
Bro, Storm. Dude, Storm is so cool. You could put her as the lead in the next X-Men movie, and I wouldn't bitch. Oh, you got to have a black woman lead? That's Storm leading the X-Men. That's how it always is. Well, not always has been, but that's how it's been since the 80s. It's not an issue. Well, 90s. So it's not really an issue. I love a character if they're good or bad or whatever. They just have to be written well. I don't care what they look like. I don't care. I don't care if what the religion of the creator was. I don't care what the politics of any of the creators were. If the character's awesome, cool. Half the time though, the crazy people don't create the good shit. Actually, that's one of my issues with Steve Ditko and his obsession with objectivism from Ayn Rand. I think that ruined what could have been a more interesting comic book career, because Ditko is one of the all-time greats, but having read a lot about him and having read Ayn Rand's work, I've formed my own opinion that Steve Ditko really was an architect of his own demise, and the bitterness that he carried for decades towards Stan Lee, Marvel Comics, and the industry as a whole really were his own doing, and I have very little sympathy for Steve Ditko in hindsight because of the choices he chose to make. That being said, Spider-Man's my favorite character and would fucking kill somebody to draw it professionally at Marvel, so you know what I'm saying. Actually, I would never do that. I don't. Andrew, I like you too much, man. I wouldn't kill you. In script, you're our guest. You're safe.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad that I'm not on the
There are
block.
plenty other people in the Marvel offices that are probably, better targets for that action than other people. But I was surprised to hear some weird stories about Ditko. How if you met him at a con, like in the rarity that he would attend, and you asked him like, what artist inspired you, he would cite painters like really, like beautifully, like amazing painters that no kid would ever realize or know at that time. Like, and he would do so. I guess the way that I was being told the story, he would do so in a pretentious manner, which always kind of felt like a bothersome part. I don't know how true those are because I'm hearing them, of course, secondhand. But it does line up with some of the other rumors they have of like how a lot of the Marvel artists at the time didn't want to go into the office to draw there. They wanted to draw at home and then bring in their stuff and leave. But Stan Lee really wanted them to be in like a bullpen or a squad room, so to speak. I understood that there was some weird internal business politics that a lot of people who worked for the then Marvel in its early days were not happy about.
I'm going to show my bias for a moment. While I have all the opinions I do on Steve Ditko and would like to see the course his career would have taken and changed comic books, I'm okay that Ditko did just quit Spider-Man because my favorite artist, John Romita, replaced him and really elevated the character in a different direction. That's just a personal aside. But I've read a lot, like blog posts, books, tons of behind the scenes stuff that anything I can get my hand on the early days of Marvel, I want to read. And you get the same I get the same take on Ditko every time. I'm a little disappointed, but Conversely, I think Jack Kirby seems like one of the coolest dudes ever. I mean, not only was he a comic book artist, he went and fought in World War II. Hell, he fucking fought the mob in New York City himself. They were coming up to one of his jobs trying to muscle him out of money, and he beat the hell out of the guys. Like, that's a story that's been talked about for decades. But I'm really not the biggest fan of his stuff compared to, Ditko or other people. So, artists, whatever. This is a podcast. We're here to talk. Enjoy the show, folks. Hope you are. Honestly,
it's
guys,
tape shit after all.
There, you said it like 3 hours in. It still happens. I'll use that hashtag somewhere, man. By the way, folks, I'd like to thank everyone who's joining us tonight. If you wouldn't mind doing us a favor, though, hit that thumbs up button. I know it's redundant. I know it's repetitive, but it really is that important. YouTube, shut the stream mid down in the middle. I know we were playing some clips. I'm not here to bitch. Oh, I was targeted. No, I know it's up. But it was for Batman, the animated series. I'm willing to take a hit for that show. It's done a lot for us. But this is a thing you could do to help us out very quickly, folks. Now, guys, do you have any other questions about Black Panther? I know I jump all over the movie, but it literally doesn't have an interesting plot like, this happens, and this happens. It goes like this. There's a funeral. We see a bunch of people in mourning. We find out the inciting incident that the Atlantans attack the government. They think it's the Wakandans. Everyone's coming for the Wakandans. The Wakandans realize it's the Atlanteans. There's a big fight in Wakanda. End of movie. It wasn't even that great. Like, the end battle takes place on a giant boat out at sea, and then Shuri fights the Namor. She fights him on the beach, Halo Reach style. And yes, folks, what you saw in the chat was true. They use a dehumidifier on Namor, and they dry him out, and he gets really weak, and then Shuri beats the shit out of him and cuts off one of his foot wings, and then he quits. He yields to her. Like, that's actually what happens. She's going to go kill him with the fucking spear, and he goes, I yield. And then she comes back to land, and they both, Namor says to his people, we're going home, blah, blah, blah. And so...
That's it?
That's how it ends.
That's the climax?
Yeah, that's the climax.
So nothing solved.
Jesus.
There are people who are going to work together or something. That was the message of this movie. Yeah, unity.
That is terrible.
That
doesn't even resemble
the messages
a plot.
No, it doesn't. And then, like, for everybody that wants to, talk about, oh, it's racist to complain about changing the origin of Namor, it really is boring. Like, this movie shows Atlantia. I can't even get the name right because it's Atlantis, Atlantia, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, excuse me. Aquaman does it better in every regard. Aquaman was a better casting choice. Like, if you need to have a brown guy play the traditionally white swimmer character, Jason Momoa did it better. To the point where we're all like, yeah, I'll hang out with Aqua Bro. He's cool. Let's have a beer. Like, that scene in the movie's accurate. Like, that would be all of us, like, on the podcast. We want to get shit-faced and hear fucking Justice League stories or something. But this movie, it just feels like the Kmart equivalent. You got Momoa up here, and you got Tenoch something. What's his fucking name? Tenoch Huerta. That was his name. So, like, and then from a visual standpoint, the underwater stuff is very dark and murky, and I get it. It's under the sea. It's supposed to be accurate. It's dark down there and stuff. But there's a way to do it artfully, and then there's a way to do it murkily, which isn't a word, and then there's a way to do it like this movie, which is murky and shitty. And you have, like, the people want to cheer on Namor, and he's the big benevolent king and all this wonderful stuff. But the scenes aren't that interesting to look at. It's like, again, Aquaman did it better. Everything about Aquaman's underwater visuals were more interesting, were better rendered, were better were thought out better. The composition, like, everything. I would rather watch.
They did the eye technique in Aquaman to show that they can see on a wider spectrum underwater, and then we as the audience are seeing that with Aquaman, right? So they didn't do anything parallel to that in this movie, I guess.
I've got a lot of problems with the Aquaman movie. I'll be the first to admit. I'm a huge fan of Jeff Johns' run on Aquaman in the New 52. Was one of the only books worth reading at the time. And it holds up as just a good book overall, not just for that era. I'm not a fan of them swapping the character of Arthur Curry I think that Jason Momoa personally is a wasted casting on Arthur Curry. I would much rather have had the Arthur Curry / Aquaman from Jeff Johns' run, and then have Momoa be the most perfect live action Lobo casting possible.
Yeah.
Because he would be the dude. Just put him in whiteface and make him literally the most perfect representation of the character of Lobo. He would have been flawless. I'm more mad at us not getting that than I am about them not giving me the Aquaman that I wanted to see, if that makes sense, because I feel like that I'm losing twice there. That being said, that Aquaman movie is fun as shit. Like I have to look past the whole Aqua Bro thing. Right there. That would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Look, Jason Momoa is the main man. Like, come on.
He is. His attitude, dude. It outside of when he's Khal Drogo, like anytime you see him in interviews, when he's in the DC films, like all I'm seeing
He's in Stargate
in
Atlantis.
my head, all I'm seeing in my head is like, why are you not Lobo right now?
Well, the reason why is because Zack Snyder is a moron.
Well, yeah, we know this.
Like he cast him as Aquaman for his Justice League stuff, and
I'm not a fan of Aqua Bro, but I do like Momoa. He is going back. This is me circling back around to what the point I was getting at. I would absolutely love to grab a Guinness or 3 with Momoa, because he's a Guinness guy, and that's one of my favorite beers as well. It's my favorite, like, not IPA craft beer.
Support. Yeah.
So I would love to do that, because he seems just like a cool guy. Thank you, my brother Trace. He agrees.
Yeah, Trace is right there.
He was born to be Lobo, like Henry Cavill was born to be Superman.
I agree. Now, if only he could be James Bond and Superman, the world would be a better place.
Very diametrically opposed moralistic characters.
Did you see that? This is getting off track, but fuck it. This is the High Council. We're having fun. Y'all know what you're here for.
Yeah.
Did you see The Man from U.N.C.L.E.?
Yes, I did.
That's
theaters.
a fun as shit movie. And that was the movie that sold me on the idea that Cavill could be James Bond. But I almost liked him more. It's tough for me because I like the idea, but at the same time, I like the idea more of him playing a character that's more like what he played in Man from U.N.C.L.E. There's a little bit more fun to it, a little more lighthearted. And I love seeing Henry Cavill play that type of character because he just looks like he's having the time of his life. You can see it in his eyes, if that makes sense. But I would see a James Bond film with him cast as James Bond.
The reason I jumped to him is because I would like to imagine a world where he followed up Pierce Brosnan and we never went down that really depressing, I want to kill myself, I'm James Bond, like fucking... What is it about movies that these people that make them don't understand? It's like, look, these are the fantasy characters that we all want to be. We all go to these movies. I hate deconstructionism. Can go suck a dick. Like all of them.
It's the low-hanging fruit of give us something the same but different. Like that's what deconstructionism is. Because Hollywood really much is like, okay, we want something the same but needs to be a little bit different because, there is still that under the surface aspect of we love making movies. We want to make sure that when they see this movie, it's like they're seeing it for the first time because they are. The worst thing you can do to an audience is give them a movie where the audience themselves are like 20 minutes ahead of what's happening on screen because now you're not entertaining them. They're just now going through the motions. But the other part too is you have a lot of uphill battles to fight in order to get that. Even if you're like a really prominent producer, you're fighting with marketing, you're fighting with studio heads, you're fighting with actors that don't want to do certain things because it could ruin their brand. There's a lot of obstacles to overcome to try and avoid the deconstructionist path of stuff. Right now, again, it's still up in the air because we still have to wait and see what Zaslav is going to do with DC films because the next slate of movies are still under what Hamada approved. And Zaslav is kind of like bandaging those, I guess. And then once those are done, that's going to be all his and James Gunn and Peter Safran's stuff for the foreseeable next few years. But yeah, it's the deconstruction. The deconstructionism is the low hanging fruit of same but different. It's you want to do same but different. It's like, okay, we'll capture the spirit of the characters and the IP, and the different comes from, okay, what adventure can we put them into that they haven't faced before? Like that's where you reconcile your different, especially for IPs. Like for Star Wars, it's like, okay, we have Luke Skywalker. We can capture the essence of what Luke Skywalker is, but let's put him against an enemy that we hasn't faced before. Like, he's not going to fight another Jedi or another Sith. Maybe he's going to fight some sort of species that is immune to the Force. Like, does it violate Star Wars canon? Probably, but at least we're not violating Luke Skywalker. You know, I mean, you can reconcile it to a certain degree.
Well, that goes back to this whole idea of the people that are in charge of these IPs and get put into these creative positions just want to do their version of the character. That's why we get this deconstructionism, because they don't want to put in the work and time and effort that it takes to keep a character true to who we know them to be, who fans know them to be at their core, but put them into new situations that maybe challenge their beliefs, challenge their core, but they're going to come out on the other side of it probably reinvigorated, but it's going to still tell a new story while remaining true to the character. And deconstructionism allows them to circumvent that and be like, oh, well, this is my version of Superman, or this is my version of this character. I don't want your fucking version. I want the character. Go away.
Well, yeah, but we've been getting that, especially with Batman, since 1989. Like, that first Batman film, which I adore, that's Tim Burton's version of Batman. And then you've got Joel Schumacher's in Batman Forever, and then you've got Christopher Nolan's in Batman Begins and so forth, and then you got Zack Snyder, Ben Affleck and Zack Snyder's. Those are very much more the director's stamps on those visions as opposed to the character being brought out. It's not in the same way as how the Christopher Reeve Superman, that's not really Richard Donner's take on Superman. That's Superman and Richard Donner just shepherding him into this new medium. Like,
agreed.
We haven't really gotten that type of approach for the superheroes in a long time. Like, I would even argue, as much as I enjoy the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, that is more Sam Raimi's version of Spider-Man than Spider-Man from the comics on screen. It is what it is. I would say that even Robert Downey's and Jon Favreau's Iron Man, I would say it takes the best parts of Iron Man from the comics and weaves them into a more Robert Downey Jr. stronger vehicle for that part. However, I would say Captain America, especially the Captain America, the First Avenger, that feels like it's Captain America pulled from the comics and brought to the screen, at least from my take from reading the various issues from way back when. I did miss the idea that they didn't have Steve Rogers be a comic book artist as his cover job in the movies, but you know, at least
we got to see him draw.
Yeah, we did.
That was actually a really cool part for me. That
first
first one.
I love that first Captain America movie actually quite a lot. It's just actually a very heartwarming movie. There's something that I just feel a swell of, like, despite how much of a jackass he is outside of the films, Chris Evans played a really, really spot on Steve Rogers.
Oh yeah, man. Mm-hmm. I at times haven't been as kind as I should be to the first Captain America film, because like I remember the build to get to that first Avengers movie, and so once I owned the Avengers and the subsequent or the previous films, I kind of wanted to jump to just get to the Avengers. I wanted that, this new Marvel world. And so I was like, yeah, Captain America was cool the one time I watched it. And then, the sequel comes out. But I caught it not that long ago. It really has it's just really fun. It's just... It
has a charm to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the music's great. It's got that original song that plays a couple times.
Yeah.
They really do a good job capturing what feels like a 1940s period piece, but also feels like it feels like what the 1940s version of a comic book would try to create, this perfect idyllic version of their reality, which wouldn't necessarily be a bright, sunny, chipper look, because you're only a handful of years, right after the Depression. I mean, it goes into the war stuff, and then it gets better. But like, yeah, you're years after that stuff, so the country's gonna be a lot different, a lot darker. Yeah, I really liked what they put out there. I think Joe Johnston was the perfect guy for it. Rocketeer was a great example. It was like a fucking a great appetizer to what they got with Captain America on film.
Yeah.
Agreed.
The only way you could make that better, out there is another multiverse where it's the Rocketeer teaming up with Captain America, teaming up with Indiana Jones. That'd be fucking cool. Like, really fucking cool. Because, like, I know Cliff Secord's just a pilot, so he's not going to really be that great in battle, but, like, I think Indiana Jones could figure out how to fly that rocket pack and save the day.
Indy could figure it out.
He's a doctor, after all. That's what makes him cool, as well as, being able to survive a nuclear blast in a refrigerator.
Everybody's got a superpower.
See, that felt kind of stolen from the Batman the Animated Series episodes, Riddler's Reform, where he's like, how did you escape the toy fair that I blew up you up? He's like, well, he didn't tell Enigma, but he told Alfred and Dick, oh, I just went into the safe.
Oh, man. Since you brought up an episode of that show, what is your absolute favorite one? Or just give or at least one you really like, if your absolute favorite's too hard to figure out right now.
Oh no, my favorite one is Paging the Crime Doctor, and the reason it's my favorite is because it shows the honest aspect of who Batman and the Bruce Wayne dichotomy is. It shows that there's a core Bruce Wayne, because that episode is Rupert Thorne has a tumor pressing against his heart. His brother Matt is a doctor that lost his license because he didn't report a bullet that he took out of his brother to the police like he should have, and he works for his brother to patch up his men and whatnot. And so when Rupert Thorne can't go to a hospital, he has to do the operation in his seedy little makeshift clinic, and they kidnap Dr. Leslie Tompkins to help perform the operation so that Rupert Thorne can live. And you find out that Leslie, Matt, and Thomas Wayne went to school together and were close friends, until life took them in different directions. And Batman saves the day, and Matt Thorne turns himself in because he doesn't want to kill Leslie, as Rupert Thorne asked him to after the operation. And Bruce goes in to see him. He says, I'm going to help you with your legal fees and put in a good word with the judge, because you are under duress, and I feel for you. And Matt Thorne is under the same impression of what his brother's been doing for years. He's like, well, you're going to want something. What's the catch? And Bruce Wayne's like, well, there is one catch. He's like, forget it, Bruce. I'm not doing anything for you. I'm done selling out to those sort of things. And Bruce says, no, you don't understand. I don't want anything illegal. I just want the one thing you can give me that no one else can. And Matt's like, well, what's that? He's like, please just tell me about my father. And it's like, that just hits you hard emotionally, because you realize, like, this is not Bruce Wayne the Playboy putting on a guise and trying to distract people from the fact that he's Batman. This is not Batman, doing his deduction with James Gordon, or being the intimidating the foe to criminals. This is the core guy, the guy who's like, I just want to know something about my parents that I didn't have the opportunity to learn because they were taken away from me from so young. And it's the core of the characters. The things I love about the animated series is, as much as so many writers say Batman is the core man, you see so many clues in the animated series where that's not the case, where how he treats Jordan Hamilton, Mayor Hamilton Hill's son, how he talks about how much he cares about Alfred and Robin, and then in I Am the Night, and how he cares about Jim Gordon after he's been shot, and the stuff why he makes Robin sit back when he's chasing Tony Zuko, because he doesn't want Zuko to kill Robin. Or risk killing Robin. Like, there's so much humanity in there that it's not the beast or the mission of Batman. It's the guy who uses Batman as a tool, and who uses the Playboy persona as a tool. And in some cases, he leans more on the Batman side, just because that's a bit more of an honest approach to him. But him without the mask, he cares for the kid. He cares for kids. He cares for children, just like he does in the JLU episode epilogue, where he takes care of Ace. He cares about Alfred. Like, he's not the obsessive, crazy, mission-hungry person. He's this very careful balance between who he is at a core, what he knows he can't have, and what he has to do to make Gotham a safe place, and what he has to do to ensure that he can operate as Batman without any stuff. And Perchance to Dream has that very touching moment that I absolutely love, just for that ending alone, because we are seeing the honest Bruce Wayne, just like at the end of The Grey Ghost, when we're seeing the honest Bruce Wayne when he's talking to the Grey Ghost, and then as Batman, and then again when he's getting his copy of all the episodes signed. That's the core character. That's the character that Bruce kind of suppresses a little bit in public and doesn't let people see as Batman unless there's a child involved. That's the type of thing I like, and I think Paging the Crime Doctor is very honest and truthful approach to that. That's why
I was going to watch an episode of Batman tonight, and that's going to be it.
It might bring you to a misty-eyed at the end, because it did to me when I saw it just the other day, because it's such a good episode.
I'm definitely going to watch that with dinner, because I've just been feeling the show, man. Every day I'm like, oh, I want to do something, and then I end up putting on an episode, then playing Zelda, but I'm all about that Batman right now. I would love to know how many people spent their Saturdays, this past Saturday, watching that show. Like, millions of
I
people.
bet a lot.
Shit. Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
People who haven't watched it in years.
It's a sad reason why people are watching it, but it's awesome that everyone, like, it's great to see a flood of that Batman just on Twitter, on social media, across the board, man. Like, it's a powerful statement of, like, where you are in your life when something like that comes out and how it stays with you forever.
Mm-hmm. And nobody's going to do that when Mark Ruffalo dies. Nobody's going to go back and watch the MCU films that he was in, or She-Hulk. People will rewatch the Avengers Assemble for literally every other character in the movie except for him.
If you want to watch good Marvel Avengers, do Avengers Earth Mightiest Heroes cartoon.
Oh yeah, that's
a very good 2-season adaptation. Should have got more, but Disney pulled the plug on it to do the other Avengers cartoon, which sucks.
And it wasn't, dude. That and the Spectacular Spider-Man are the two shows that I wish could have stuck around indefinitely, forever. Because man, they had a plan for the Spider-Man show. I've read Greg Weisman's interviews where he talks about he wanted to take him to college, and they were going to make the show a little darker because they were going to release those kind of episodes on like direct-to-DVD, and so they were going to be able to experiment with like the tone of the show. I was like, whoa, okay, this is going to be the best Spider-Man thing ever. Because we're coming off Spider-Man 3, and even back then, me, the guy that wants to say Spider-Man 3 ain't that bad, it's Spider-Man 3. But there was that cartoon. So I would go, well, the movies are kind of whatever, but that cartoon's got a future. And I was so excited for it, and I was so impressed by it. And then it died because of this damn Sony, Marvel not owning the cartoon rights to the show that's from Sony, blah, blah, blah. It's just
funny
sucks,
because they produced it, but for some reason they during that time Disney was getting rid of their television side of things for some of their IPs, because it was around the same time where they stopped using. It wasn't too long afterwards that Netflix's Daredevil and Luke Cage, Jessica Jones were all nixed at the same time. It was really weird area. But yeah, like Greg Weisman, who I think is a fantastic writer, did great with Spectacular Spider-Man. Really loved that. Instead, what we end up getting is Spider-Man and the Web Warriors, which was a terrible follow-up show. And
Ultimate Spider-Man, that was garbage.
That was the Ultimate Spider-Man one. Yeah. And then I remember watching. I was in one of the CBS offices in California, and we were just like doing some coverage in there, and someone in one of the rec rooms that we had in the office, they put on the new Avengers Disney cartoon, and it literally opened up with, like, I think the Falcon was bringing like cookies that his grandma made to the team of the Avengers, and I'm like, but the animation is more adult, but the concept is like childish, and I thought this can't be serious. This is a joke, right? This is someone in the office like put this together and redubbed it, but no, it was actually like that was a story function in the episode, and like they're fighting over a cookie. The Avengers are fighting over who gets to have cookies from Falcon's grandma. It's like, no, you're Disney, what the hell? Disney is ruining the Marvel at this point. And
Dude, I'm glad I never saw that episode.
That would have made me physically angry.
well, I mean, it really disappointed me because a lot of us talked. As soon as we saw that, we're like, they canceled the Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, to do this. Like, those 2 seasons cover about 30 years of Avengers of like Marvel comics, and it does so quite well.
Yeah.
And they were pretty much catching up to the current stuff going on in comics at that time, and they did Ms. Marvel justice in that cartoon show. Like, people, when they heard like, oh yeah, Brie Larson's being cast as Captain Marvel, and the rumors like they're going to be basing her off of the stuff from the recent comics and even Avengers Earth Mightiest Heroes cartoon, reconciling all that stuff, and we're like, oh, that's really cool. And then more information starts coming to pass, and you're like, wait a minute, they're doing what? they're setting it in the 80s. They're or 1996 or something of that nature, and they're doing amnesia stories. And I'm like, this is how you're setting yourself up to fail at this point with it. And then, of course, obviously the actor starts saying stupid stuff publicly. Doesn't help at all. But yeah, like that. Look at the animation to that. That's actually really good animation for this show in order to keep it reasonably under budget and tell really fun stories.
I thought the main character designs, like this is a little later in the show, were excellent. I'll pull up an image later. It doesn't really matter.
They
Folks,
could
just
have
Google the
fixed
show.
up Wasp a little better, but yeah.
I agree. The Wasp was a little hokey, but it was cool. This is probably what I would say is the best representation of Marvel just ever. Like, if you want like what's the comic books like, but I can't read a book for some reason. Well, just watch this show. You kind of, like you said, it covers
It's like
30
the clip
years.
notes.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I get the same feeling watching this show as I do when I would read like a classic 60s Avengers title, like a Don Heck book. We're talking super early in the title's run. Like, I was like, yeah, they're at the mansion, they dress a certain way, and then they go, like you said, they go through these classic story arcs. They do Kang the Conqueror so well, and like they got a guy that sounds kind of like Robert Downey Jr. doing Iron Man, so it was cool at the same time. We were like, it's classic stuff, but it kind of sounds like Robert Downey Jr. and this guy kind of sounds like this, and Thor didn't sound like Chris Hemsworth, but he sounded awesome. So
Hulk sounded like Hulk, and they did Hulk really well in this show.
Oh yeah. Like, outside of the Wasp's costume, I'm looking through some pictures of this show right now. I think I bought this on DVD.
The Wasp, I think, what hurt the Wasp is they treated her like she was a kid compared to all the rest of the Avengers, which felt like adults. And
yeah.
And I thought, oh, okay, like, because the Wasp, I remember in the 80s, it was kind of funny. In the 80s, it wasn't John Byrne, it was someone else who kept on trying to get the Wasp naked in the issues, because she shrinks out of her nightgown after she was kidnapped, and now she's flying around naked, and you can't. It was just so silly that they were doing that, but she's like a fashion designer and millionaire, and giving Jennifer Walters one of her apartments to live in for free for an indiscriminate amount of time. Like, there's weird things going on there. So when you grow up reading Wasp as a 30-year-old confident businesswoman with a little bit of a flirtatious attitude, to seeing this chick that like she's acting like a 17-year-old on her first day of college all the time, it threw you off, because Hank Pym was really well done. I loved how they made him not so much of a jerk, but a conflicting type of character, arrogant but fun to watch and see.
Yeah.
And actually, how they introduced Scott Lang and all that. Like, they hit a lot of characters in this show, and in such a few amount of episodes by comparison to other cartoon shows.
I was happy they even got to Spider-Man. I liked how they did him.
Yeah, that was with Josh Keaton, I think, was voicing him in that one, right? Yeah.
Still from the Spectacular, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, folks, there was a window of time in the early 2000s, towards the end of the first decade, where Marvel had some good movies, some great cartoons, and some pretty decent comic books. It was a cool time to be alive. And it felt, Andrew, I'm sure you remember this era where you're like, man, I can't wait to see what the fucking next 10 years of comic book stuff is like. And,
you're gonna make me depressed thinking
It
about.
can only go up from here.
Optimistic Andrew in the mid 2000s and early 2010s, like 2010, being like, man, we've got there's some stuff that's meh, but we've got some bangers here and a bunch there, and we're gonna have a great time as geeks in the next decade. And then what happens? Oh, all new, all different Marvel. We start getting some crap cartoons. The movies were still doing fine. Iron Man 2 and 3 notwithstanding. But yeah, I try not to think about how wrong I was. Because you're right, there were some great. They even did my girl Carol Danvers right in Earth's Mightiest Heroes.
Oh God, yeah, like that's the one I wanted to see, and I was hoping to see in the film, or at least some variation of that felt in line. But what we got was.
But instead, what we got was an adaptation of Kelly Sue DeConnick's unlikable twat.
It's Kelly Sue DeConnick's interpretation of what she thinks Tony Stark is, and trying to put that on as a veneer to Carol Danvers, and it didn't work.
Yeah, nobody wanted that, which is why that book has been rebooted like 8 times now.
I am so happy that Marvel has to change everything for Captain Marvel 2 and make it the Marvels. Folks, I don't think that one's going to work.
I don't think it's going to work either.
What if that is Marvel's first official flop? We're talking loses a ton of money. How would you guys
like doesn't even have a $30 million opening weekend type of thing, right?
Yeah, well, here's the thing.
Oh my God.
The only way we start to see a real change and the pendulum swing back hard is for them to take legitimate hard financial hits on these projects. And when that, I mean, you can ideology all day, but at the end of the day, when it's, when push comes to shove, the people that have to deal with shareholders are going to be like, well, y'all lost us a lot of money. We need new people. And then it's time to bring in people that can actually bring in money. I don't think we're quite there yet. We're probably still a handful of years off. But we can start building some momentum to that. And every single time they're putting in some crap and coming out with crap, tell them you think it's crap by not giving them money.
Well, I would say the one way Marvel can either save itself or kill itself with one franchise, and that's the Fantastic Four.
They're not going to do.
If they can't nail Fantastic Four on the theatrical side of things, they're done. That's my prediction. Fantastic Four is a hard thing to get right. It's been tried many times and has not yielded the results that they would have liked. And if they don't, ship up with their due diligence and talent for their next phase and for Fantastic Four, I don't think they could recover from that in the same way. They'd have to do essentially a break of a couple of years and then restart from scratch.
I disagree, and here's why.
Sure.
I understand your reasoning, what you're going for there, but here's why I disagree. The Fantastic Four films that we've had already haven't been very good, and they haven't done very well. So there's already not much of a precedent for immense success with that franchise on film, at least. What I think will be... I think... Here's what I do think. I think if they come out with a Fantastic Four film and it's really, really good, that will tell me that they're trying. However, I don't think that film would be the make or break. I think the make or break is how well are they going to be able to perform with franchises with histories of proven success? How well are they going to be able to do with the next Spider-Man film? How are they going to be able to do with when they finally do an X-Men film in the MCU? Those are franchises with Okay, the last two Fox X-Men films notwithstanding, they have they have a history of doing well at the box office at the very least.
Typically, more hits than misses, that's for sure.
Yes, exactly. So they still have a history of proven financial success. So if they fail on those ends, specifically, I think with the X-Men, that I think would be far more telling. I don't foresee an instance where they necessarily fail financially with Spider-Man, especially coming off of the crazy amount of money that No Way Home made. I certainly hope that Spider-Man 4, whatever the heck they end up making it, is a lot better than No Way Home, because No Way Home is a mediocre film that's held up by the third act, because Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire give fantastic performances, and the movie does actually leave Tom Holland's character in a perfect spot, in a actual Peter Parker Spider-Man spot. But those two franchises, I think, are far more of a cornerstone than Fantastic Four. Don't get me wrong; I'd love to see a Fantastic Four film done very well, and I think that would be very telling that they have a team on it that is trying if they can do a really great Fantastic Four film, because that's something that hasn't yet happened. We haven't had a good Fantastic Four film. The first one has a couple of fun moments, but that's it. It's not a good movie. However, seeing as that doesn't have some history and precedent of success tied to it already, I don't think that's something that I would call a make or break moment for the MCU.
No, that's fair. That's good logic behind that. I agree.
Regardless, I'd still love to see a great Fantastic Four film.
Same.
Me too.
I don't think we'll get I don't think Marvel will have the big success with the Fantastic Four, though, because like I said before on the show, Fantastic Four has been so bad for like the last generation plus that even like hardcore fans are just like, the Fantastic Four didn't really do much from the 80s. Well, they were great in the 80s, but like, what they do in the 90s? What was Fantastic Four doing in the 90s? They were a second-rate team to Marvel. You had X-Men, you had Avengers beneath that, then the FF was like beneath X-Force or something. So it could be the best, most faithful adaptation of the classic Lee and Kirby stuff. It could be as good as The Incredibles was, the live-action version of that film. I still think there's just something about the Fantastic Four having not worked in any medium in 30 years. I think that hurts it. Just because it's a big Marvel IP, it's still in print, it's still doing its thing there, but it's never lighting the world on fire. It's almost like the Fantastic Four are kept around out of obligation because they're the first family of Marvel, not because, they got 1 million people a month that want to read it.
No, I think there's some good precedence there, because the Fantastic Four is more like a science Swiss Family Robinson, but everyone that's tackled it in other medium is trying to make them superheroes. And I think that's what's hurting them as a result. They are scientists, like explorers. They're far. I mean, again, so the difference between DC and Marvel is that Marvel is more soap opera like, and DC is more mystery problem solving like. At least in the earlier days, that's what I kind of picked up and noticed, and especially in the 80s to a degree. DC was going way more on the pulpy side. End of the world, big stakes, not. The interpersonal drama between characters was like secondary or third on the list of what was actually happening. Whereas in Marvel, it was way more about the relationships and the struggles of everyday life. And then, Dr. Doom is taking over the Baxter Building now. That seemed to be more akin to what the brand was at that style. And they both companies worked quite well within those brands. But when Marvel is trying to expand out into cartoons and live action, they were way more miss than hit until they kind of found their footing with Blade and X-Men in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then they really found their footing with the actual Marvel Studios formation, because those first movies before you get to Avengers, they're very character-driven films. Like the plot, the scheme, so to speak, is very secondary. like the first Iron Man, there's not really a plot going on in that movie until Obadiah Stane starts trying to build his own warmonger suit. Like, and that happens after like the first hour. But the thing is, you don't care because you're so lost and invested in Tony Stark and his journey of, survival, reconciling with how his family got the money that they have, and what his legacy is going to be on the world. And that worked out beautifully. For the Fantastic Four, you've got a dichotomy of, you've got an arrogant child in Johnny Storm, you've got a tortured Ben Grimm who's trying to make the best of his situation, but really has difficulty doing so because of his mutated appearance. And then you have the happy couple of Sue and Reed Richards. And the conflict between them is kind of a simple one, which is Reed gets too busy in his own inventions and trying to save and cure Ben that he kind of neglects Sue. So that's a lot of balancing to do in a film, and then throw in an external threat such as the Mole Man robbing banks or something of nature, and only the Fantastic Four can stop them, or some crazy creatures are coming in through the negative zone. It feels like there's no real balance or symbiotic relationship between what the characters are doing and what's happening with their responsibilities and superpowers with the Fantastic Four. It almost feels like they're very, very separate. And I think that's probably one of the issues that the Fantastic Four has not been able to overcome, really, in cartoons and live action. So,
yeah, it's unfortunate that Marvel's first family hasn't carried forward in the same way that a lot of other IPs within the brand have. And Jeff brought up an interesting point where he said that you look back at the 90s, what were the Fantastic Four doing in the 90s? I don't really remember. Nobody really cared.
I couldn't tell you.
The focus in the 90s was on X-Men and Spider-Man. And at least in Marvel, the IPs that are still doing at least the best for them, regardless of how just overall comic book sales are with the publisher, but just those IPs in general still doing well, are ones that were given a heavy push in the 90s. Because looking at literally any other Marvel IP, even back, I look back a couple of years ago when I was still buying comic books on a weekly basis, spending a couple $100 a month at my LCS. Books like Avengers weren't really selling much. Iron Man, Captain America, any of these books, they weren't really selling at all. The books at Marvel that people were actually buying were Spider-Man, which Nick Spencer was a below average writer for Spider-Man, with the exception of, I think, 2 arcs that I read of his. You had Donny Cates on Venom, which was actually a very good book, at least the arcs that I read. And then you had the X-Men, which I think Jonathan Hickman was an overrated writer when he was doing his own version of deconstructionism on the X-Men team, and then he somehow managed to take the team and section of Marvel's comic universe that already had the most convoluted lore. He took that and somehow made it even more so. I don't know how the hell you do that, but that's what he did. But it was, at least early on, selling very well. And I think a lot of that is more credit to how good the art was on the book, because there was some legitimately good artists on it. But I look at that, and then I look at, the success of the movie franchises and, IPs in Marvel that, have gotten push or haven't gotten push. And I'm like, what, that kind of tracks. The Fantastic Four, people forget that they even outside of diehard Fantastic Four films, or fans rather, people forget that they even exist until you bring them up. because they don't get push, and that Marvel didn't make an effort to keep them relevant by putting good writers on the books, and therefore that resulting in strong sales for the books, which would then give them reason to push for good, box office performing live action adaptations. So that's the way I look at that. That's the way that makes sense to me. So that was all spawned from Jeff saying that where the hell were the Fantastic Four in the 90s? Nobody freaking remembers.
No, was there not like an arc with Franklin Richards for a while in the 90s?
Franklin Richards, is a
dangerous
mutant. Mutant, and he can create a whole fucking universe on his own because, comic books.
That's the hook. Franklin Richards is the reason for Infinity for everything after Endgame. That's what they're gonna do.
Cool. Can he kill this new universe then?
Well, when he wakes up, it's gonna cease to exist. Yeah.
I'm fine with that. I will watch that movie. Welcome back, Jeff.
Thank you. It's good to be back. I just had to step away. The FedEx delivered the proof of Tits and Art, so I had to get that to make sure it was cool. So,
nice.
It's awesome. I'm looking at it. So the pages are so big, and the way they're printed, they just basically sent me 2 posters, but it only fits 4 pages of this shit. But I'll tweet that out at the end of the show, folks. We have the High Council to focus on right now, but I am super excited to get this out. Thank you to everybody who backed. Go to titsandart.com if you want to go get yourself a copy right now. It's a limited print run, and when it's gone, it's gone. With all the projects, once we print them, we don't go back to print unless we do a special new campaign or something like that. So be on the lookout for this coming soon. God, I'm excited. I can't wait to get the fucking books, man. They're big. I'll tell you off air. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I'm excited, folks. Go get yourselves a copy. Get in on the excitement. Enjoy it. Tits and Art. Big book, 11 by 17. That's huge. So, and it's only $20. So go get yourself something nice for this holiday season. Now, Fantastic Four, man. I don't know what's going to happen. Do I care? I kind of do. Because I dig the old school stuff a bit. It'd be fun to see them do it right. But I just don't believe in it. Now, let's talk about our final topic. And then we can put this baby to bed. Folks, thank you for joining us tonight. Do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already, and leave a comment after we go off the air. That helps as well. So,
appreciate everybody hanging out with us in the chat.
Yeah, guys, it's been a great time tonight, as always. I'm glad we're doing the Tuesday show again. We'll do some more streams, some more stuff. Be on the lookout. Just make sure you're always following WCBS. Have that bell turned on to everything, and follow us on all social media platforms. We're going to be expanding because YouTube is doing whatever. So be on the lookout for us on other platforms too. And if you have some big ones that you want to see WCBS on, let us know. We'll go everywhere because we're for everyone. All right. So our final topic we're going to talk about is Andor, this Star Wars show. We're not going to necessarily go talk about the quality of the show, but the fact that it is being moved not from Disney Plus, but from Disney Plus to Hulu to Freeform TV to FX. It's everywhere. So, Andrew, you sent me this story yesterday, correct?
Yeah.
What was your initial thought when you heard this or saw the story?
So it was a mix of emotions. One was hilarity. The other one was shock. So I was laughing myself stupid because I said to myself, they are that desperate to get some numbers on this freaking show that is supposedly the best written show that they've done of their Star Wars shows, but nobody gives a crap about and nobody's watching. And yet I was so shocked because this is Disney. Disney is so tight with their stuff. Like, for them to just release it on other platforms blows my mind. Because the whole deal was, we're gonna have Disney Plus exclusive Star Wars. It's the only reason why people have your damn platform. Initially, Oh, you're gonna have Disney Plus exclusive Star Wars content? Okay, like, what are people gonna do? Have your platform, your monthly subscription for watching the old animated movies? No, the people that give that much of a damn about the animated movies already have every single one of the 18 and a half VHS releases and re-releases that they did, plus the 25 different DVD re-releases, and then the Blu-rays as well, because they're Disney fans, so they buy all of your shit. So it blew my mind. It's like, wow, this is the level of desperation that they're at. This just screams scrambling to me. And putting that into, when I put it in context of what I've heard so far about like the early test screenings of the next Indiana Jones movie and like test audiences just like not being on board at all, like them scrambling kind of gives me joy. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. They need to fail and fail so abysmally and gloriously that they have no other option beyond, losing an obscene amount of money and their shareholders being pissed off at them and their stock dropping even more than it has been in the last year or so. But to clean house, they're going to have to clean that mouse house and bring in some actual creatives, people that actually know what the hell they're talking about when it comes to these IPs. Bring in good writers, bring in lore experts alongside those writers. I don't care if this is supposedly a very well-written show. Everything that I've heard about it, I'm like, okay, so it's a well-written show, but is it a well-written Star Wars show? It doesn't sound like it's a well-written Star Wars show to me. It just sounds like you could slap it in any generic sci-fi setting and call it decent writing. Star Wars ain't that. Star Wars is not generic sci-fi. Star Wars is space wizards, people. This is what I'm here for. I'm here for the Jedi and Sith conflict. Yes, I also like the Mandalorians. Yes, I like the bounty hunters and all these people. But there's a certain magic to Star Wars that sets it apart from all other sci-fi out there. And you gave us a show that, okay, so you've got decent writers on the project, but it's about a character nobody cares about. No wonder people aren't watching it. And so they're throwing it on FX. This is why I was really laughing my ass off at this article when I first saw it. I usually make the joke when something new is coming out and it's something I have zero interest in. I'll make the joke of I'll wait for FX with commercials. And that's actually what they're doing here.
Dude, when you sent me this, I was like, that kind of, I get that people think like, oh, they're going to use it to expand the Disney Plus streaming numbers, but like, you're using the two shittiest episodes. You're not really going to get people hooked on, like I've been watching it because I was going to do stuff for the channel, and we're waiting until the end of the season to finally do that.
You're going to monetize your misery.
Yeah, I'm going to monetize the misery. And so, like, as somebody who's watched every episode and wanted to be kinder to the show in the beginning, like, the free episodes they're giving away are the bad ones. Like, I'd say the more recent stuff. And I know, of course, you can't just have somebody jump in the middle of a show, but maybe if this was part of the plan before, they would have structured the show differently or had some kind of hook to get people hooked on different platforms. That's why I tend to agree with you, how this is an afterthought, because they're like, well, we want to get people to watch. We'll give them this free content, or this premium content for free, and watch them jump over. And it's like, I get that mentality. You're Disney, of course. But as somebody who's seen it all, it ain't the best.
But it also doesn't make any sense in that context, because if that's what you're trying to do, if you're trying to get people on board by giving them the first 2 episodes for free, okay, fine. So let's say you throw those first 2 episodes out there on ABC, FX, and whatnot. Do that like when those first 2 episodes were first aired. Don't do it when the season's almost over, and the most you're going to get is people like, okay, I'm interested enough. This is your best case scenario. I'm interested enough after watching those first 2 episodes on FX with commercials that I'll get a 1-month membership to Disney Plus and binge the rest of the season, because that's basically where you're at. You're not getting any money out of these people.
Well, the other part too is that CBS did this with Star Trek Discovery a few years ago, and it didn't work. It actually showed them how terrible the show was.
Well, good. It saved humanity in a different way. Is that show still on?
They've wrapped shooting their last season months ago, and I think it's debuting after Star Trek Picard season 3 debuts, I think.
It's hard to keep up with those shows.
Yeah, it really is. I recently found out last year that one of my friends had been working on it as a set decorator for the entirety of this show, but was under a gag order to not tell anybody about it. And then,
oh wow!
And then when she left, that was right before season 4 dropped, and I was like, "Well, is there a 5th season?" And she was like, "Well, they didn't ask me to come back, so I'm able to talk about it. So I'm guessing if there is, I'm not involved." I'm like, "Oh, that sucks for you."
I'm not a big enough Star Trek fan to care, but I did hear that Paul Wesley is Kirk in like recent season.
Yeah, he's doing an impression of Kirk. He's not very good.
I like him as an actor, but that's unfortunate.
I don't know who that is. I'll have to check it. Well, send me a video of him one day, Andrew, if you remember.
Will do.
Yeah, but Andor, we're a couple episodes to the finale, right? And I sound so prepared. But folks, use that as an indication for the quality of this show.
You sound so invested.
Well, I enjoy... Let me get serious for a moment. I actually enjoy that this show does not feature Jedi or Sith. That is not my favorite element of Star Wars at all. My favorite Star Wars movie is the first one. There's only Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. Luke isn't a Jedi. He's got a lightsaber. He's just a guy with a lightsaber. So that was the Star Wars movie I watched the most. That was the version of the universe that I lived in with my toys. There's just something about they perfected it in the beginning of Star Wars. So I like that this show is more in line with that. I like seeing the stormtroopers. I like seeing traditional ships. I like where they are at with the current run of the prison and stuff. Like, I was into this stuff. But there's just no stakes in any of it because we know where this story goes. So, script doctor, earlier in the show, I think you had said about the audience being 20 minutes ahead of a movie and they're being bored because they're just going through the beats. That's what Andor is for me. I'm literally going through the beats because I know where the character has to go. I know how the character has to die, and I know where all of these characters end up. You know? Oh, but Jeff, they could go anywhere in the galaxy. Not really, because by Return of the Jedi, the Empire is vanquished. Yeah, but what about the formation of the First Order? I don't fucking care. Like, that's where it all is.
Yeah. Never heard of her.
No. Get that out of here, man.
I mean, that's the one trick when it comes to writing backstories for characters where you already know their final resolution. One of the flaws that I felt with the prequel trilogy is that they made that trilogy specifically about Anakin Skywalker when it really should have been more about the state of the galaxy and its falling to the hands of the Empire, and Anakin Skywalker's part in that should have been a little bit more secondary, because this you have to make the first Star Wars movie. You've got the Death Star and its dangerous levels, and the Empire's already got a stronghold. Empire Strikes Back is an intimate story, and Return of the Jedi is the conclusion. If you don't want to repeat those types of stakes, but you still want to have great stakes, there's nothing greater than the fact that the entire free galaxy as it is, and troubled as it is, falls into the hands and becomes an empire. Like, that's your big emotional stake across that trilogy, is the corruption of it. And every movie should be one step closer to that, and it should be kind of blatantly so. It should be as obvious as, the rebels destroyed the first Death Star. Now there's hope in the galaxy again, right? That should be the inverse, but we didn't get any of that. We got the politics, but it was mostly so much focused on Anakin is the prophecy, the chosen one. You bring about more Western religions into the concept of the Jedi than the Buddhist and spiritual natures of the Eastern belief systems and Eastern cultures. And I think that's what hurt it. And then conversely, when you have something like Andor, and I'm not a fan of the Gilroy family at all. All three of those guys, I don't think they're very good writers. I think they're really good with production design and art. When it comes to actually telling a story, they are something to be desired. With this case here with Andor, I appreciate the concept of the formula they're using, where every 3 episodes is supposed to be a beginning, middle, and end of a specific story arc for the character. The problem is that it doesn't feel complete, and it feels inconsequential to whatever journey Andor is going on. It doesn't feel like there's enough connective tissue for us to even care. And on top of that, Andor doesn't have a character, and Andor isn't really a character. He is hollow, empty. I'm not interested in what he's doing or why he's doing it. And every effort that this show makes to try and get me interested is circumvented by the fact that other characters we're being introduced to are far more interesting. Like Skarsgård's character, I would rather watch a series about him than Andor. He's interesting. He's a guy who's posing as an art dealer who's secretly funding and kind of being the leader of this underground rebellion. That's more interesting to me, and he's been doing this for 15 years. That's more interesting to me than this guy who's looking for his sister and all of a sudden is this expert in understanding how the Empire works and is facilitating a huge heist for credits to fund further rebel cells. And then when he takes his cut and leaves, he stupidly decides to follow stormtroopers that are chasing after other people, which doesn't make any sense at all, and that throws him in jail for the rest of his life until he finds a way to break out. It's very convoluted, and the time that we're spent with Andor is not us getting to know his character in the same way you get to know the character of Han, Luke, Leia, and Obi-Wan. It's very superficial, and I think because of that, audiences are after, especially the pattern of poor Star Wars shows. I think audiences have decided to check out because they're not getting anything worthy with Andor. And at no fault to the cast and crew of the show, of course, but it's just there's nothing there to compel an audience to want to watch or see why this guy was important to the rebellion, and why Rogue One is a meaningful end to his journey. Like we're just not getting anything that would appease that at all. So
well said. I'm sorry. Sometimes when you talk, I actually just listening along with the audience, and I go, "Oh wait, I'm on the show." So
thank you. I'm flattered by that.
So every time you're on the show, those gaps are what that means. It's like, oh shit, hold on, I'm supposed to pick up the lead here. So yeah, I mean, I don't even know how to respond after just telling you exactly, that. So
I'm sorry, I did not mean to end the debate, the conversation.
Oh no. It was an awesome ride. People enjoyed it. The chat's loving it. I want to say I'm not dreading watching Andor in a couple of hours or whenever I get to it, but I do find that I'm like forgetting to watch it by days. Last week's episode I think I watched over the weekend, so it's just like, oh yeah, Star Wars has that show, and I don't know who's watching Tales of the Jedi. If you watched it in one sitting and you liked it, I watched that one Ahsoka episode and I did not like it, and so I didn't go watch the Dooku episode. And I know it's going to be anthology style where it jumps differently, in episodes. I just couldn't commit. I didn't like what I watched. Dave Filoni is not Star Wars. It's like everyone was so angry about Kathleen Kennedy, Rian Johnson, and J.J. Abrams that they were just like, please give us Dave Filoni. That guy is just as bad in a different way.
He can't even keep his own lore straight.
No, he doesn't keep his word.
He does. Well, not just that, but he's done multiple things that are contradictory to other things that he's done within the Star
Wars.
More
than anything Lucas has done, actually.
And it's like, you don't even have that much to go off of. How are you not able to keep your own story straight here?
Because he believes his own hype.
Well, he's also
being a yes man to Lucas.
He can't not utilize Ahsoka, because that is the one thing that most Star Wars fans, or at least a lot of them, will attribute as to his like one accomplishment and contribution, but then he even screwed up that by like inventing time travel in Star Wars just for the sole purpose of her not getting killed off. So he couldn't even not screw that up, and then he's got to literally insert her into everything. It's like, look, I get it. There are plenty of Ahsoka fans out there. That's fine. I don't begrudge you for that, but he can't not use her. He can't help himself.
No. She's his crutch, essentially. And the other part too, and I still haven't found any video or any proper written source to confirm that if George Lucas ever anointed Dave Filoni as a worthy successor of stewarding Star Wars. Like Dave Filoni, I hear tons of times say, like, I'm the number 2 guy for George. Never heard George remarking any compliments that way, other than Dave comes up with some good stories for Clone Wars, and they work, and I like them. And that's about as close as I've been able to find. And it's kind of funny for everybody that likes Ahsoka, and I can understand why they did a disservice to her by making her an apprentice to Anakin. I think she would have probably been a way better character if she wasn't an apprentice to Anakin, because now her entire existence is predicated on the fact that Anakin taught her, and it also breaks the rules with regards to the Jedi, which is, well, why is a Jedi that's not necessarily a knight at this point? He's still a Padawan teaching another Padawan. That's like a student. That's like a student in teachers college teaching an entire class by themselves for the whole year instead of actually a legitimate experienced teacher teaching there. It's reckless. It's dangerous. It's arrogant. It's out of character for what the Jedi were to that point. So yeah, that's just my take on it. That's why I can never really get involved in, or at least get immersed in the Clone Wars in that Clone Wars cartoon. Even though I hear many positive things about it, it just felt like it was kind of like fan fiction, essentially. That was just my take.
I watched a lot of it. I never got back into it after Disney picked it up and added those final episodes. I liked it. I liked Ahsoka enough. People have heard me talk about her in a positive way on the show. I am over the character by many, many years, to the point where what I found interesting was when she like quit the Jedi and walked away, and you're like, ooh, I wonder how she dies, and then you never knew the story. The more I found out about Ahsoka Tano, the less I wanted to see her. And it wasn't out of anything besides the mystery is what makes the character interesting. Like knowing, that's what I meant earlier about like knowing how Andor dies, or knowing how this defeats the purpose for me. What I want in the story is to like know they're still out there, but like not know exactly what happened. Or like, for example, know they die or they have to die because of the Jedi purge or something, and let it be left up to the interpretation. Like your memory, your imagination runs wild with it. I prefer it that way. And
See,
so
I think the only way that it doesn't, the only other way that I think it would work with her is what was initially going to happen before, Filoni pulled time travel in Star Wars out of his anus, was Vader killing her. Like that to me actually cements Anakin's fall even further. That shows how far gone he is at that point. And I actually like that. But nope, time travel in Star Wars, because
you just know that if Dave Filoni could, he would make Ahsoka Tano the one that saves Anakin from being Darth Vader instead of Luke.
Well, aren't you ready for the special edition?
Don't speak things like that into existence, scripts. We don't want to.
Well, sadly, when that world between worlds, that is your Deus Ex Machina. And you can erase everything with that. You can erase the prequel trilogy and everything that came afterwards with that one device. It's the dumbest thing you could ever incorporate into a story. With
that. That's the only use that has in my mind at this point. Erase the sequel trilogy, and then let's go back to Star Wars.
And then 30 years later, someone who loves the sequel trilogy is like, nope, we're going to bring it back and erase the prequel trilogy. And then you're just in that whole, it's like the the Cups game on the side street of like New York City or something. 3 cups and 1 little ball, and that ball is okay. Which trilogy are we going to go to is real and not, and it's just they're being constantly rotated. You don't know which one it's gonna end up in, because each new player has their own outcome for what they want Star Wars to be.
Remember when they were going to erase the sequel trilogy any day?
Oh yeah,
I was so.
Yeah,
I was
there's
ready.
no way that was going to happen. Yeah.
Oh hell no.
Yeah.
Disney
But so many
had
people
so much
wanted
money
it.
invested. Yeah. That's how any source or anything that gets out there like gets legs. It's just something people want, like wish fulfillment, and it's cool.
It's very hard to Highlander to something, especially as something as big as Star Wars.
Well, the world could use another quickening, so why not? Oh, all right. So let me check in with the audience real quick, and then I think it's time to go. It's been almost 4 hours, guys. So I don't know about you, but I need a break. It's 10:04 here. I know it's going to be midnight for you, Andrew, right?
Yeah, it's 5 after. It's whatever.
All right. So
I had insomnia anyway.
Oh, well, perfect. We'll go for another 12 hours, folks. Make it a real
get
success.
some water first.
Dr. Coffinail says 4 words: carry, ass, rhino, birth. Well, folks, if you're new to this channel, welcome. But if you know what those 4 words mean, well, enjoy.
Did you see that guy accidentally hit that moose with his car?
No.
Holy shit. Jamie, pull that video up.
I saw that movie in theaters, and I still remember how much the audience was howling that day from that scene. Nobody saw that coming.
I saw that at home on VHS, rented it from Blockbuster, and I cannot remember. I was still in single digits, that's for sure. I can not remember the state that my mind was in looking at that scene.
Dude, I saw it in theaters as well, but my mom hated that movie, and she's like, I don't know if we're gonna see many movies for a while. I was like, Mom, relax. Even though my mom's cool, she did not have a sense of humor about Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. Like, Pet Detective she was okay with, but for some reason she's like, that's the worst movie I've ever seen. No, it's not. You've seen shittier movies. Her favorite movie is a movie called Dangerous Liaisons, which is a film worse than Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. So,
so that was a factually inaccurate statement.
I'm like, yeah, dude. It's like she had a copy of Amadeus on tape. All right, cool, Mom. Well, I don't. But no. Pointless for any. That's just pointless. Anyway, let's close this out. We have Caffeinated Wolf who says, consider this covering part of your next ticket. Well, Andrew, thank you very much.
It wouldn't let me only send 25 cents to cover half of your ticket to Black Panther 2. So,
well, you just bought me 4 more tickets to Black Panther. We're going to take this box office over $1 billion. We're going to fucking trillions, guys. Wakanda Forever needs to be the biggest film in history. $4.719 trillion at the domestic box office alone. It's going to end poverty and fix the world's problems. Everything's going to be better. You're going to be happy too. The end.
Defeated racism, guys. Black Panther Wakanda Forever made $1 trillion.
We landed on the moon. Woo! We did it, boys. Victory lap. Victory lap. And then finally, Matt G sends in a message, a super chat, but no message. Well, Matt G, as always, thank you very much, friend. There's nothing to say, but we appreciate it just the same. So, Script Doctor, where can everyone find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at ScriptDoctorPhD. I do have a YouTube channel. I might go back to doing some gaming streamings in the near future, but for time it's still on hiatus, especially with my videos. With Black Friday approaching, I might actually pull the trigger and get a new tower PC.
There you go.
So that I can avoid what I had recently, which was a system crash during a system restore. So that was fun. But outside of that, everything's pretty good. Just follow me on Twitter. Follow me on YouTube at youtube.com/scriptdoctor. And thanks so much for having me on today. I love talking comics and characters with you guys. It's a lot of fun because you know your stuff way better than I do, and I like learning from you on that type of in that regard.
Hey, well, same goes to you, man. I love your perspective on filmmaking, on writing, and your stories are great. And I still think back. I watched an episode of Power Rangers not that long ago, and I was thinking about what you had talked about for your version of that film, and I'm like, man, if only. So, I enjoy having we love it, man. So please come back again soon, is what I'm going to say.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Andrew, where can everyone find you on the internet?
Well, everybody can find me over on Twitch throughout most of the week at twitch.tv/CaffeinateedWolf. You can also find me over on Twitter. If you type in Caffeinated Wolf into the People's Bar, you'll see me pop up as the first People's. You can also find me here every Tuesday night with Jeff, talking cape shit and geek shit, and all around good shit, and some dumb shit. But thank you guys so much. Chat, you've been awesome this evening. Appreciate all the engagement. Appreciate you all hanging out with us for a bit of a longer stream. But honestly, I didn't even notice until Jeff brought it up because
same here.
I love just geeking out with these gentlemen.
Same. It's been a blast, honestly, guys. These are the kind of conversations I'd have with an audience, without an audience, just good stuff. It's like being back in college. So, folks, you can find me here on the channel, working on a couple more videos. Gonna have something fun and different for next week, the holiday week. So you'll be at home. You'll have some more time to watch. So check out what WCBS is gonna give you next week as a holiday thank you. Also, folks, check out our Twitter page. I just uploaded the picture of the proof. As I said, it's a big poster-sized image full of just a few pages. But if you backed the campaign, thank you very much. If not, hey, there's no problem. You can still get yourselves a copy. There is a limited number left. So once that's gone, it's gone for good. But if you're looking for more content from WCBS, we have over 1,000 videos. And we have, probably 1,000 streams. And they're all almost an hour long. So we've produced a lot of digital content on YouTube. So do us a favor. Check it out. And hit that thumbs up button before you go. But from all of us here at the High Council, thank you for watching. If you want more, catch me on Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with WCBS episode 334, I think. And until then, folks, be smart, be safe, be cool, but always be excellent to each other. Do me a favor, Andrew, scream.com.
.com!